Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show and happy Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. President Biden had a busy one, hanging out at the beach, not getting asked again about Hunter Biden or the White House cocaine on CNN. And now he's shuffling around, and I do mean shuffling, with King Charles overseas. It's tough being president when you work normally 10 to 2. Now you got to fly overseas and actually shake some hands. It's better than what our Treasury Secretary is doing, which is bowing to the Chinese over and over and over again, which is something we don't do, Janet Yellen. We don't do. As Americans, we stand upright. We don't bow to China. No diplomats are supposed to do it either. Check your little protocol booklet. You embarrassed yourself and the country. Meantime, the media continues their attacks on Casey DeSantis. Man, they are trying to demonize her, not to mention RFK Jr. Later, we will be joined by 2 health and wellness experts. But we begin today with 2 guys who are not exactly that. Stu Burguiere is host of Stu Does America on Blaze TV, and David Marcus is a columnist and author. Hey, subscribe to the show on YouTube and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I always wanted to grow my own vegetable garden. And now I have a Lomi, and it has changed the way I think about food waste and gardening all in one. Listen up. Lomi transforms your garbage into gold at just the press of a little button. Lomi is a countertop electric composter that turns food scraps into dirt in under 4 hours. Now I love composting, and my kids love helping too. It's made cooking at home even more fun. There's no food rotting in the garbage, smelling up your kitchen. Thanks to Lomi, you only have to take out the trash, well, far less than you used to. You can turn that waste into nutrient-rich dirt that you can then feed to your plants out in your garden, or you can just put on your lawn. You can use it for anything you want to fertilize. All your food scraps, your plant clippings, and even those leftovers in the back of your fridge, they go into the garden after they go through your Lomi, helping grow more nutritious food right in your backyard. The circle of life. Whether you want to start making a positive environmental impact or you just want to grow a beautiful garden, Lomi is perfect. Head to lomi.com/MK. Use the promo code MK to get yourself $50 off your Lomi. That's $50 off when you head to lomi.com/MK. Use the promo code MK to get your discount at checkout. Turn your food waste into dirt with the press of a button with Lomi and use that code MK to save $50. Lomi.com/MK. Welcome back, guys. I shouldn't impugn you, Stu. I've never seen you sitting here smoking a cigarette on the air like my friend Dave, which is why I took a shot at his non-role as a health and wellness expert.
I walk a lot, Megyn.
Okay, good. You know, I think we're going to talk to our health and wellness experts about how even worse for you than smoking cigarettes is total social isolation. And while I've seen your tweets, Dave, and I feel like I know you well enough to know this is like sometimes something you complain about, you are beloved and you are all over the internet and Fox and so on. So I think hopefully you're making up for some of those cigarette deficiencies or dangers with your ubiquitous social presence. All right, guys. So can we just kick it off with Casey DeSantis? Because, man, she is like, she gets the left to go, they hate her in a special way. It's almost coming at her more viciously than we saw with Melania, who didn't really say that much. They just hated her because she was Trump's wife. But Casey DeSantis hasn't said that much. She did appear in an ad, and maybe that's why they're really coming for her. I think we've got, do we have the ad for the Casey DeSantis ad? I thought we did. Yeah. All right, here we are, SOT 9.
We've been told that we must deny truth, back down, and look the other way. Enough is enough. When you come after our kids, we fight back. Because there's nothing we won't do to protect our children. They're not yours.
These are our kids.
Our nation's children are all our children.
We will not allow you to exploit their innocence to advance your agenda. We are no longer silent. We are united, and we have finally found our fighter.
We're not going to let you impose an agenda on our kids. We're going to stand up for our kids.
You do he did for us.
It's a good ad. It's one of the best ads we've seen from Team DeSantis. And look, she puts herself out there, so in it comes. But my comment is just about this particular viciousness of the attacks against her. And before I toss it to you, I'll just give you one example. This is from, is it MSNBC? Yeah, it's MSNBC, which had a panel discussion. David Jolly is the one commentator. He was a former Republican up until a few minutes ago. And Tara Setmeyer, watch.
For many, she's the brighter side to Florida's angry governor. For others, she's become America's Karen. And I think that's the ultimate disconnect here with a campaign that needs to embrace more constituencies to get to the White House. Look, she is a more effective messenger than Ron DeSantis. But if all she is doing is amplifying the wrong message, she's actually clarifying Ron DeSantis's weaknesses. As I like to say, it doesn't matter if it's presented in heels or boots. The DeSantis doctrine's a losing one. We're going to learn that the more Casey DeSantis gets out there.
Tara, I think David's beaten you in terms of taking my breath away during a segment. But real quickly, because I do want to move on to Mike Pence for a hot second. America's Karen, David Jolly.
Well, I called her this, Serena Waterford wannabe needs to cut it out. We see you. So there's all kinds of names for her. She needs to stop trying to measure the great drapes in the White House and think that she's some kind of Jackie O reincarnate.
Okay, Serena Waterford, for those who aren't familiar with Handmaid's Tale, is the main lead character. She's married to the abusive husband and forcing the handmaid to bear the husband's fruit, and she's a crazy lunatic. So that's how they want to paint her. She's Serena Waterford. She's America's Karen, as Jonathan Capehart just laps it up, Stu. Absolutely loves every moment of it.
Of course. And it's just so shocking to watch this. I don't know. Maybe I'm in a different world. I don't know. We're going to have a back and forth in the primary between Trump and DeSantis and all these other people, and that'll all be sorted out over time. But when you watch the mainstream media talk about this, they turn Casey DeSantis into this horrible figure. I will say, my wife watched this ad, and my wife was literally audibly cheering it on as it was going. Now, she's not a super highly political person. She just wants to defend our children. And I think that is the reaction you get from that from a lot of people. Of course, politics plays into this, and everyone's going to analyze this. And I don't know if anyone on MSNBC actually believes the things that they're even saying. They're just going to try to trash whoever they think is going to beat Joe Biden, whoever else is running on the left. But like when you're talking about connecting with actual moms, when you're talking about connecting with actual voters in this country, this is the type of thing that is on their mind. They see this thing, these terrible images on their televisions every single night, and they want somebody who's going to stand up and at least tell them, hey, you're not nuts. You're not nuts for thinking that, boys are boys and girls are girls. You're not nuts for thinking that people marching down the street saying we're coming for your children is a threatening moment. You're not nuts for thinking your kids should be allowed to go to school and hang out with their friends instead of being locked up behind masks and Zoom calls. These are things that American voters relate to very closely, and they make Ron DeSantis out to be like he's the worst politician of all time. He went from winning by 0.4 points in his state to 20. Now, he might not be able to beat the former president of the United States. I mean, that's a very difficult task. But they make him out to be this terrible politician who can't relate to anyone. Casey DeSantis, they're mocking her appearance on Twitter right now. I mean, they've gone nuts, and I don't think there's any path back for them.
What are they saying about her appearance on Twitter? There's nothing to mock. She's stunning.
She's beautiful. I mean, look, this is not my take, obviously, but they're trending right now is Eddie Munster, and there's a photo where they're putting Eddie Munster's photo next to Casey DeSantis because I guess she had some eyebrow. I don't know if it's doctored or what. They're trying to make her look like
these people are disgusting.
Again, there might be things to criticize about Casey DeSantis. I don't know her that well, but I don't think her appearance is one of the things.
There was also some consternation about the fact that she wore high heels on grass, which I don't know if you know about this, Stu, or Megyn. I didn't know that was something one was not supposed to do, but apparently
I don't think it's a faux pas so much as just difficult. It's annoying. Right. You just keep sinking into it.
I found it to be very nice when I wear high heels on grass. I think it's very, very comfortable. As long as
we'll get to that segment later. All right. We'll get to that
My
segment
apologies,
later,
Dave.
Miss Netherlands. Stand by on that. But what do you make of it, Dave? Because, okay, so she's taking a political stance. She's a former news anchor, so she understands how to work the camera and how to sound on camera, and you can tell. But I think the reason they're reacting so angrily to her is they accurately perceive her as a threat.
Spot on. I mean, absolutely. There have not been a whole lot of bright spots for the DeSantis campaign since he announced. She is one of them. And there's a political history to this. First ladies weren't terribly important until 1992 and Hillary Clinton. And there was a lot of talk about, wait a minute, she's going to have a role. Nobody voted for her. Michelle Obama was a little bit in this vein as well, right? Where Obama was like, we're a team. The Bushes weren't so much, as you rightly point out, like Melania wasn't, but Bill Clinton and Barack Obama both became president of the United States with these very sort of strong female figures on their team. And I think that this can help DeSantis. And I think that's why you're seeing so much over the top fire at her, obviously from the left, but even to some extent from Trump supporters. So yeah, she's clearly over the target and she's taking a lot of flack. And she does so far seem to have the ability to handle it and to really help his campaign. I don't think we've seen it in the numbers yet, but I think she's clearly a big benefit to Ron DeSantis.
Well, that's the thing. So people don't vote for a candidate because of his wife. They might not vote for him because of her, potentially. Like Hillary wasn't exactly a draw for Republicans considering Bill Clinton, though he won. So she's not going to get him past his polling difficulties, Stu, but she's more of a help than she is a hindrance. And that's why she must be destroyed. And this will just be the beginning. And she can't do anything right. You know, she had on that jacket that said something like, you know, where woke goes to die. And they were like, oh, she's the target. She's the Melania of Target, or whatever they put it. And then she wears like the sweeping Jackie Kennedy-esque, you know, dresses in some of these photo shoots with the capes. And they're like, oh, she's a Jackie O1. Okay, so every woman can be both. You can wear the motorcycle jacket one day and you can wear the beautiful long dress with the cape the next. And if they were saying this sort of stuff about a lefty, these same people would be outraged at the rampant misogyny. But as always, it's totally fair game against a Republican wife.
Yes, of course. They can come with all the force needed. You can say anything you want about a Republican wife, and it's disgusting. I think she is an asset. I think, you know, she's someone that can help. I mean, if there's been any criticism of DeSantis, that's been pretty consistent, is that maybe he's not the most relatable guy, and that he doesn't come off as relatable, and she can help with that. I think, you know, having a beautiful young family is something that most politicians really, really want. But to show how the unfairness has never been more clear than it was with Melania Trump. You know, we can all talk about, they love to make Michelle Obama into one of the 5 most beautiful women in the world when she was serving as in her role as a first lady, where you have Melania Trump, who is an actual legitimate supermodel, right? Like, she's coming into this built for pictures, for photos, for being on camera. And none of the major publications ever put her on the cover. There were never any fluff interviews about how she dressed or the decisions she's made about her style. She got none of that, despite the fact that she really wasn't involved politically. She wasn't out there promoting Donald Trump's policies per se. She took a backseat role. She didn't really want to be out there as far as the politics of it. And yet the media completely besmirched her to every opportunity. Here's someone who legitimately came from the role of being a fashion icon. So no matter what Casey DeSantis does, she's going to get a terrible treatment on this. And so is every other Republican wife. You just think that they wouldn't be so obvious about it. They get into it so quickly with no hesitation and, you know, really no knowledge of who this person is. They just want to destroy her because that seems to be their narrative all the time.
These same people, I mean, truly, are praising Jill Biden's dresses as like the next Vogue icon. And honestly, the ones that they promote her in, she looks like she's wearing my Nana's house coat. So just, I mean, it's such an obvious joke. With all due respect to Dr. Jill Biden, fashion is not at the top of the list of her accomplishments. I'm sure there are many others. She'd be glad to tell you. They begin with getting her PhD. But my point is, they hold her up as a fashion icon, Michelle Obama as a fashion icon, and Melania, who never made a misstep with her fashion, gets totally ignored. The same thing's about to happen to Casey DeSantis, even though Ron DeSantis is struggling in the polls. And that's exactly where they'd like to keep him, Dave. That's exactly because the left is convinced Trump should be the nominee. Trump is beatable as the nominee. And the left wants Donald Trump in that position much more than it wants Ron DeSantis. Now, having said all that, DeSantis is struggling in the polls. We've talked about it many times. I mean, he's getting down into he's flirting with single digits now, which is definitely not the position you want to be in, but he's around 20 in most of the polls. And he goes on Fox News this weekend, and Maria Bartiromo, she cross-examined him at one point, and then he talked a bit with Will Cain about why it seems like his message isn't totally connecting. Listen here, SOT 11.
I'm curious in the analysis of Ron DeSantis of why not yet is connecting.
Well, I think, did you just see the news today about the record fundraising haul we've had? Nobody's been able to match that in the history of modern presidential politics. So we've got a huge amount of support to be able to take the case to the people. We really haven't started that yet. We're in the process of building out a great organization.
And then listen to this. Here's the next one with Maria over the weekend.
You've done a great job pushing back against woke. We know that. But I'm wondering what's going on with your campaign. There was a lot of optimism about you running for president earlier in the year. But here's this weekend's headline from the Politico playbook. Failure to launch. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis' campaign to topple Donald Trump has stalled. We are way behind, says a top DeSantis PAC official, sounding the alarm. What happened?
Oh, Maria, these are narratives. The media does not want me to be the nominee. I think that's very, very clear. Why? Because they know I'll beat Biden. But even more importantly, they know I will actually deliver on all these things. We will stop the invasion at the border. We'll take on the drug cartels. We'll curtail the administrative state. We'll get spending under control. We'll do all the things that they don't want to see done.
David Marcus, just point of clarification there. That Politico article she was referencing was quoting one of his top PAC guys who said, I'm going to be honest, he's struggling. He's way behind. Trump's the master debater. That's a point of vulnerability too. That it wasn't Politico. It was DeSantis' own team saying those things. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's a hard question to answer about, why aren't you doing better? I don't think anybody cares about the donor numbers. That's a very inside baseball thing that really doesn't move the needle with voters. But one thing that DeSantis said that I thought was key is he said, we're building out a great team. Okay, let's see it, right? Because right now, most of the messaging of the DeSantis campaign that's getting out there and penetrating is either coming from super PACs or the random anonymous Twitter rapid response team that he has attacking everybody who says anything slightly bad about DeSantis or the campaign. And that's really, really, really not working. I mean, if you put the campaign staff, if I ran into the campaign staff, the actual campaign staff, such as it exists at 7-Eleven, I wouldn't know who they were. So they need to get control of this thing, because what they're doing right now, picking fights with conservative influencers and sort of just going all over the map the way that they're doing it, it's clearly not working. It's disjointed. And he does have a good message when he gets to saying it. I thought those were both really good hits, but the campaign needs to take the lead. And I think it's time to turn off the overly online Twitter response team.
Because it could be a matter of message discipline. I mean, I totally know what you're saying. I don't think it's necessarily his team, though it might be his team you're referring to. But he's got some random people on Twitter who are diehard DeSantis fans who just pick the nastiest fights. Now, this is also true. I lived through 2016 and Trump and Steve Bannon. So it's not like this is unprecedented.
No,
Maybe they think they have to fight fire with fire.
Trump's cake, right? We know that about Trump. We don't know it about DeSantis. We don't know if people will give DeSantis the pass for vulgarity or crudeness or things like that. that they gave to Trump. So far, I don't think they are.
What do you make of it, Stu? Because that did dominate. There's a story over the weekend that just dominated Twitter. And we all know Twitter's not real life, but it was a little odd. Like his team's messaging on Twitter, they do seem to have very thin skin and be pushed off message very easily. You know, that instead of seeing their message pushed all weekend, I saw some fight they were having with Tim Pool. That's who I think Dave is mentioning when he suggests conservative commentator who they're fighting with over a 9-second clip of Tim's of it was like one of the Pride marches where people are saying we're coming for your children, and they used it in a campaign ad, which is not unusual. And at the end of the ad, it said, paid for by Ron DeSantis. Then Tim Pool started saying, you didn't pay for it. That's a lie. I don't know exactly how this went down, but if that's what Tim Pool is complaining about, he's wrong, because the ad is, of course, suggesting this is an advertisement we paid for. We, the DeSantis team, paid somebody to put it together. We, the DeSantis team, paid somebody to put it on Twitter. We paid Twitter. I don't think they're suggesting we paid for every single second we're using in the ad. Some of this they'll argue is fair use. So when it's for money, we'll find out whether that holds. In any event, why pick a fight with Tim Pool? Why the hell not move right on and ignore it?
Yeah, I don't know why you would do that. I think these dumb battles that go back and forth at this point, I totally agree with the fighting on Twitter and all that stuff. I don't know what that gets people. I don't like it. We're in the primary timeline, and the primary timeline is the dumbest timeline. Everyone gets incredibly angry and screams at everybody, and we get nothing out of that. Of course, there are massive issues going on with the president of the United States, lots of stuff to criticize on his side that gets ignored when you're going back and forth with other conservatives about differences that might be minor in detail. I mean, look, I think we can blow this up as too big here. The president of the United States is running again. This is very rare. Donald Trump is probably the most famous person in the world, right? He's not going to be easy to beat in a primary. We're 6 months away from a vote. You shouldn't be panicking if you're a Ron DeSantis supporter, if you're in the Ron DeSantis campaign. But this is going to be hard. This is Trump's to lose, and it's been Trump's to lose from day one. What is his floor in these elections?
Wait, 40%? Let's go back. Let's go back, Stu, because we just looked at this on Friday. And if you look at early this year, early 2023, shortly after the midterms, there was a 2-point difference between the two of them in Iowa. 2 points, DeSantis and Trump. And that was when Ron DeSantis was coming off of his enormous and very impressive win down in Florida. And Trump was getting beaten up in the news for having picked or at least backed the wrong candidates in those midterms who failed mightily in state after state. And Trump sort of had the stench of losing on him at that time. Forget the indictments. Those all helped him. And Ron had the glory of winning. But then time went on and the indictments came down, which soared Trump's numbers, and Ron got farther and farther away from his big win in Florida and sort of, left memory. And now things have dramatically changed. So there is a question about whether he should have gotten in earlier and just sort of taken the wind off of those, the sales he got from winning and used that to buoy himself to a stronger position earlier.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of strategic questions. I think suboptimal would be the word I would use to describe the rollout so far for DeSantis. There's a world in which he does great and starts beating Trump early. I mean, that could have happened. I just don't think. I think what we're talking about when DeSantis was very close, it was vibes, right? Trump was in a rough spot. He'd come off of a bunch of endorsement losses. As you point out, DeSantis came off of a big victory. It was a high point for him. Since then, the news has changed. I don't think DeSantis's message has changed. I don't think Trump's message has changed. But Trump has been dominating the news, and he will continue to do that. I mean, if you think back to when is the best Trump you've ever seen on the campaign trail? If I had to argue for a particular month of time, I would argue the last month of the 2016 election, where he came out of the Access Hollywood tape. He was in crisis. And he just buckled down. He was on message every single day. He nailed it and wound up winning that election. If that Donald Trump exists throughout this election, no one is going to beat him. Ron DeSantis has no chance to beat him, and I don't think Joe Biden does either. But that is not the Trump we see every single day. A lot of times he goes off message. He could, I think, lose this, but I don't think just Ron DeSantis out of pure will can overcome a guy in the Donald Trump position. He's at 40%, probably minimum in most of these states, which gives you a very minimal chance to try to find a window to defeat a candidate, especially when there's 11, people in the race. So you have the debate opportunity. He has a chance to do this. But I think it's important to look at this and understand that it might not be that Ron DeSantis is a terrible candidate or there's something wrong with Casey DeSantis's looks if he loses this. It might just be that Donald Trump is a particularly unique person who has a path to this that is almost difficult to deny.
Well, Dave, you tweeted out the other day an interesting thought. Quote, "What I keep coming up against is that Trump can win the nomination without a single current DeSantis supporter. DeSantis needs half of Trump's. I don't see how he can pull that off." It's a good point. I mean, DeSantis needs to wrest away loyal fans of Trump's. Trump doesn't need to wrest a single fan away from DeSantis. DeSantis, of course, his other lane is to consolidate the anti-Trump vote. But even that is not looking like a sure thing right now.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a disaster. I saw Alyssa Farah yesterday tweeted something about the only way that you beat Trump is you have to go after him. You have to attack him and call him a liar. And then she cited as her examples of people who are doing a good job of this as Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson and Will Hurd. And it's like,
my God,
combined, they're at 3% in the polls. Like, what are you talking about?
Do what they're doing.
Do that. No, this is the problem in a nutshell, right? This is a very difficult needle to thread for DeSantis because he can't just come out and say Donald Trump was a bad president. He's on the record saying that Donald Trump was a good president. So what he's got to do, there's an analogy that I use. It's a biblical analogy. You'll forgive me for comparing Donald Trump to Moses, but Moses brought the Israelites out of slavery with Pharaoh and brought them to Mount Sinai. But because he broke the tablets of the law, he wasn't allowed to go to the promised land, right? Joshua had to take the Israelites to the promised land. DeSantis needs to be Joshua. And the answer isn't to take the Israelites back to Pharaoh, back to the rhino establishment or whatever you call it. The answer is to make the positive case to voters that I love what Trump wants America to be. I want America to be that too. And I have the unique skill set to actually make it happen this time.
Okay, but wait, but let me challenge you on that.
It's the only path I see.
So, but here's the thing. I think that's generally DeSantis's thought too. And if you look at how he's done the media over the past 4 months or so, he's been going to Trump-friendly media. He has definitely 100% been trying to get in front of media that Trump supporters watch. And it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. So he's got to come up with some sort of a different plan. And he's not bashing Trump. He hasn't been over the past month more so. But in most of that time, he hasn't been bashing Trump. He's been saying nice things about Trump and trying to focus his criticism on the left. It hasn't worked. The Trump fan base they remain where they've always been. So it must be extremely frustrating for him, right? Because it's like now he's going to try bashing Trump. I don't know that moves the needle either. To Stu's point, how the hell are you going to get around the former president of the United States who's still got a second term available potentially to him?
Yeah, Megyn, I think, though, one thing that the DeSantis team should probably think about is I don't think DeSantis is going to win tons and tons of voters over by going to conservative shows and making his case. That will help him with donors. If he's doing very well there, it'll help at some level. But what would excite, I think, the Republican base are the very viral moments that we've seen from DeSantis before when he's going after reporters and people on the other side. Put yourself in the firing line a little bit. Take the hits from people on CNN and then slam them and beat them. He's shown he's very, very good at this. Do that more and people will remember it.
That's a great point. We never see him doing that. We used to see that all the time down at the Florida state level when he was fighting over COVID. And it's one of the reasons he became a star. And now, Dave, he's on with all these conservative commentators, friendly commentators who barely challenge him. And the viewers, the Republican base comes to those exchanges already hating the liberal media, right? It's like he goes in, at least with his base, with an advantage. And he should be begging for them to take unfair shots at him because he's A, brilliant, and B, he actually is adept at fighting. But we have not seen that over the past several months.
Yeah, and Stu's right. I mean, we absolutely should. You know, I last weekend I covered the Moms for Liberty event where both Trump and DeSantis spoke, and you know, the people that I spoke to there, they want someone who's going to fight for them, and that's what everybody thinks of Trump as. And DeSantis is so well positioned, specifically on those issues that moms are worried about, to go on MSNBC and have those fights. And even if he gets dinged every now and again, people are going to love that. And people will start to feel about DeSantis the way they feel about Trump, which is he's fighting for me. He's my man in the arena. So I think that's fantastic advice. I think he should be all over the left. I think kind of doing what RFK Jr. is doing on the right. You know, RFK Jr. will go onto more right-leaning and conservative places, and it makes a splash, and people read about it, and they're interested in it. So, yeah, I think that's something that they could start doing very quickly that would be very, very effective.
RFK Jr., RFKJ, as I call him, he just did a long interview with The New Yorker with David Remnick, and it was unbelievable. I love watching, in this case, reading these exchanges, because the guy does not back down. It's amazing to me the number of people who just try to dismiss him as a conspiracy theorist. He's a conspiracy. He's a conspiracy. If you actually start to look at his so-called conspiracies, he has evidence for all of them. Now, it's not that it's to say that I endorse them all or I come to the same conclusion on all of them, but they're trying to paint him out to be an Alex Jones, and he is not an Alex Jones. And that's the latest attempt by The New Yorker. We'll talk about that. And we'll talk about Moms for Liberty and Miss Netherlands, who's a dude, coming up. Dave and Stu, stand by. Do you remember eating cereal as a kid? Magic Spoon has replicated your favorite childhood cereals to taste good, but each serving contains 0 grams of sugar, 13 to 14 grams of protein, and 4 to 5 net grams of carbs per serving. It's a keto-friendly, gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free way to relive those moments watching your favorite morning cartoons. Plus, it's only 140 calories a serving. It's like there's magic in every spoonful. With over 8 unique flavors, you won't get bored of feeling good with Magic Spoon. Oh, and birthday cake is back by popular demand. The super popular, previously limited edition only flavor is back to stay. We're celebrating our birthdays early with this fan favorite. Check it out. Go to magicspoon.com/MK to grab a custom bundle of cereal and try the magic for yourself. And be sure to use our promo code MK at checkout to save $5 off your order. Magic Spoon is so confident in its product, it has backed it with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you do not like it for any reason, they're going to refund your dough. No questions asked. Get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/MK and use that code MK to save $5. Guys, we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about what's happening on the other side of the aisle. So let's talk Biden and RFKJ for a second. Joe Biden is an angry, angry man. So says Axios in its latest drop, which is entitled Biden's Private Fury. In public, President Biden likes to whisper to make a point. In private, he's prone to yelling, "Get off my lawn!" and more. Behind closed doors, Biden has such a quick trigger temper, reports Axios, that some aides try to avoid meeting alone with him. Some take a colleague, almost as a shield against a solo blast. The president's admonitions include, "God damn it, how the F don't you know this? Don't effing BS me." This is the Megyn Kelly cleaned up version of Joe Biden's language. I would never say these words, as everyone knows. And "Get the F out of here," according to both current and former Biden aides who have witnessed and been on the receiving end of such outbursts. The private eruptions paint a more complicated picture of Biden than his carefully cultivated image as a kindly uncle. Well, not for most of us. They go on to say, Dave, no one is safe, and give specific examples about what he does, including try to bully young staff, where he just keeps trying to exhaust their knowledge until he stumps the chump to make them squirm and feel uncomfortable. I could go on, but it's an interesting look at, Uncle Joe.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's been a very carefully curated image for Joe Biden. We know that this is the guy who would very intentionally swim naked in front of female, Social Security or Social Security Secret Service agents. We have some knowledge of his temper. from some of the things that we've seen on the laptop and other places. But generally speaking, I do sometimes get the sense that we go a little overboard with the Joe Biden's lost it. He doesn't know what he's doing. I wonder sometimes if that's you remember the mobster who would walk around in a bathrobe and pretend like he didn't know where he was.
Wasn't it John Gotti?
No, it wasn't John Gotti.
Wasn't John Gotti?
I can't believe I can't remember. I'll come up.
Right, my crack team will look it up.
But I can't remember his last name. But yeah, I mean, look, Biden knows about the sketchy things that Hunter's done. Right? We all know that. There's a different Joe Biden than the one that we see on TV. And I think that the American people are starting to see it. Now, what's curious about the fact that we're starting to see this from more liberal or mainstream outlets is the possibility that he's being thrown under the bus a little bit, that there are real concerns that he's going to be a problem in the general election. And maybe now is the time that he needs to get a little bit kneecapped to get somebody like a Gavin Newsom sniffing around the race.
He is having troubles on that front, Stu. I mean, he's over there meeting with King Charles today in the UK. And take a look at this video where King Charles is like having trouble getting the president of the United States to move. Here they are together. King Charles is there. He's like, over here. Oh, over here, sir. Here. This way. Come on. It's not time to chit-chat with the guard. Here we go. That's it. You got it. And Biden's gait is so unsteady. I mean, he's really telling us he's going to do 6 more years of this, Stu, and you take one look at him and you think, I got questions.
I have many, many questions. And it's funny because the way that Trump was sold to everyone informed why Biden was the nominee and why he became president. We were told that this was a return to normalcy. And everything about this has been a lie. It's not a return to normalcy. It has been crazier and crazier and more erratic than anything we've ever seen before. We were told this is a guy of the utmost competence who was going to make every move the right way in foreign affairs, for example. And we see Afghanistan, what's gone on with Ukraine and so many other things. We were told this guy was the ultimate family man, right? And here's a guy who won't even acknowledge his 7th grandchild, won't even acknowledge this poor little 4-year-old girl exists. She had no input into what Hunter Biden's activities were. You know, we were told this guy was a good guy. And I think that's kind of fundamentally where many people in the middle of the 2020 election that didn't have partisan ideology fell. They saw Donald Trump. They didn't like the things that he said, or they believed some of the hype on some of the allegations against him, or whatever it was. They didn't like him. And they said, you know what? I'll go with this normal family man who will at least be competent and won't be yelling at people, and he won't be tweeting so much. Well, I mean, you've cut the tweets down by a significant percentage, and I don't know that was worth it, because everything else you were promised with Joe Biden, you've received the opposite. And I just, the left wants this to be a Trump-Biden contest because they just hope people will remember that feeling. They didn't like Donald Trump. Maybe when he's on TV again, they'll all remember they don't like him, and instead will ignore what Joe Biden has done and his performance has been like the past few years. If this election's about Joe Biden, I just don't know how he could win it.
I mean, it's crazy because he's 80 years old now, Dave. Trump is 77. Look at Trump in Iowa going into the Dairy Queen. I mean, completely slaying, as my 12-year-old daughter would say, slay queen, slay the day, slaying the crowd. Look at the difference of 3 years and just the vibrance, of each man. Watch.
Everybody wants a blizzard. What the hell is a blizzard? And take care of the people, okay? Will you take care of them for me? I will do the blizzard thing, all right?
Just so funny. And then he hands out the blizzards. And then let's not forget what happened when he went in front of the UFC to watch a match the other day. Watch this. Look at that. Look at that. He's walking out to Kid Rock's American Badass while Joe Biden's like, King Charles, steady me, old chap. Where do I look? What should I do?
Look, I mean, Trump is, I know these guys from New York. I mean, Trump is just one of these guys. He likes to party. He likes to be the center of attention. He always has. You can go back to the 80s. You can go back to Studio 54. This is who Trump is. He's clearly a much more spry 77 than Joe Biden is, at 80. So Democrats keep saying that that's the contrast that they want, that they think Biden's better off, I guess, because he already won in 2020. But I think they should be a little careful what they wish for as far as that goes. And I do think it's worth pointing out, because I've been having a hard time trying to figure out why more Democrats aren't saying maybe we do need a primary. I think it's important to remember that Joe Biden is in many ways the third term of Barack Obama. And those are the people he has around him. Those are the people who run his White House. And so that may be the answer, that the old Obama team that has been in control of the Democrat Party for 16 years now, that they're not ready to hand over control to a Gavin Newsom. And I'm starting to wonder if that's part of the dynamic that's keeping everybody behind Joe Biden. Because, I mean, he looks ridiculous.
Right. He truly looks feeble, Stu. You look at that video with King Charles, he looks feeble. And of course, we could spend an hour just butting the sound bites together and the videos together to show similar instances. And Trump is robust. And Ron DeSantis is in his mid-40s. I mean, forget Trump. I mean, DeSantis is a young, fit, life ahead of him man who's got basically toddlers in the governor's mansion down in Florida. So this is quite the pickle for the Democrats, because they know it. And maybe Dave's right. Maybe the Axios piece and some of the other questions that are starting to percolate are the reasons behind it. I mean, Biden went on CNN with Fareed Zakaria over the weekend. They said the interview was foreign policy based, nothing about Hunter. I mean, hello, you could 100% backdoor a question on Hunter Biden's China corruption, Ukraine corruption, and the allegations against the pair of Bidens if you have to be foreign policy based. You could, Fareed. It wouldn't be that hard to stick to the term. Because sometimes they say to you, he's going on a foreign policy trip. We'll give you an interview about that trip. But you can always backdoor the most relevant news. He chose to backdoor a question on age. Okay, cool. Listen to, though, how fawning it was, Stu. And you tell me whether the left is ready to get rid of this guy. Watch.
Finally, Mr. President, you've often said when people ask you about your age, just watch me. And I think a lot of people do watch you and are impressed, and they think you've been a great president. You've brought the economy back. You've restored relations with the world. But many of these people do say, and these are ardent supporters of yours, the next thing he should do is step aside and let another generation of Democrats take the baton. Why are they wrong?
Well, let me, not right or wrong. Look, to use the phrase again, I think we're at an inflection point. I think the world is changing, and I think there is one thing that comes with age if you've been honest about it your whole life, and that is some wisdom. I think we have enormous opportunities, and I think I just want to finish the job. And I think we can do that in the next 6 years.
Mr. President, it's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
This is journalism. This is journalism today. It's been an honor to talk to you about how incredibly virile you are in your 80s, Mr. President. It's embarrassing. Right? It's not even just Donald Trump, because Donald Trump and Joe Biden don't even seem like they're in the same generation. They seem like, like Joe Biden could be Donald Trump's dad, the way they act. You see this from people all the time. We had Alan Dershowitz on the air the other day, and he went through this whole thing about the Constitution and went on and on and on. And then we get off the air and you look up his age. He's 84. He seems like he's much more spry and aware than anything that our president has right now. And it's just sad. It's sad to watch it. And I do think that's going to be a factor. I do think people can't help but see it. That's the thing. When in politics, you can talk about policies, you can talk about all these distinctions, but there are certain things that people can't help themselves but see. And when they watch Joe Biden, they see this feeble man who cannot do this job. They know there have been lots of problems in the country. They might not like Donald Trump. They might not like other things that are coming from the right, but they can't stop themselves from seeing the obvious. And it really is obvious, especially when you see him next to Donald Trump. You talk about that video. I will say this. I would love to be a billionaire one day. I think that would be a wonderful life. Donald Trump's done a lot of great things. But if being a billionaire means I have to go my whole life without knowing what a blizzard is, I want no part of it.
He knew.
Blizzards are delicious. And they're an American icon.
I think he was joking.
I don't know what a blizzard is.
Could be wrong.
I'm not a billionaire.
What? You don't know what a blizzard is? The most delicious ice cream treat. Dave, we got to go out, man. We'll get some cigarettes. You can teach me how to smoke. I'll teach you some blizzards.
Sold.
He definitely, I think he knew. I love how Fareed Zakaria says to President Biden, you've restored relations with the world. Has he really? The disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, where now we have women getting tortured, the war in Ukraine, the threatened war in China. Maybe he means this, Dave Marcus. We send our Treasury Secretary over there, and she decides to break protocol repeatedly by bowing over and over to the Chinese, not even the leader, like the others in command. Look at this. Look at this. Over and over and over. Look at her. He's not bowing. He's totally erect. Completely standing up, a man of power. She's on our behalf, bending over.
Yeah, she's like one of those perpetual motion machines where the duck keeps like, it's ridiculous. But there was something that I learned at a conference at the Army War College back in 2018 about Donald Trump, speaking in terms of like our relationships with the world. And there was an ambassador who spoke who had worked both under, or an ambassador, but a diplomat who had worked under both Obama and Trump. And the diplomat was asked the question, does it ever happen where Trump tweets some crazy thing that seems like it's at odds with American policy and the embassy phone rings off the hook and everybody's like, what happened? Is this? And she said, yes. She said that is a thing that sometimes happen. But she went on to say that sometimes in diplomacy, that can be good because diplomats get in these ruts where they just go in circles and circles and circles. And our foreign adversaries and allies never were quite sure what Donald Trump was going to do or wasn't going to do. And I think that we know exactly what Joe Biden's going to do. He's going to give more money and more weapons to Ukraine. He's going to pull out of Afghanistan exactly how he pulled out of Afghanistan. So I think he's done I think Biden's done enormous damage to our standing in the world because there's no originality in his foreign policy and there's no strength in it.
Just to pick up on the earlier thread, Stu, about fitness among the candidates, you've got RFK still saber rattling and saying, debate me. Let's have a debate. You got well-known supporters of his like Jack from Twitter, who founded Twitter, saying, debate him. We want to see it. Like, make him fight for it. And look at the contrast. I know RFK Jr. got criticized by his haters for this video, but he was obviously trying to show the distinction between him at age 69 and our current president at age 80. There is zero chance President Biden could do one of these push-ups. This man is fit. He is a good-looking guy. He's very charming. He's extremely smart. And he has spent his life trying to protect children from toxic environmental pollutants. That's how he's made whatever money he has. Not to mention he comes from a family considered Democratic royalty. But the contrast could not be more clear.
The contrast is incredibly clear. And it's funny. Obviously there's no win for Joe Biden to go in and debate RFK. Obviously, he does have a big lead and he wants to stay away from anything that's risky. But he also knows that, look, the difference between RFK and Joe Biden in one big, if you want to make a broad generalization, is that RFK Jr. is authentic. He might not be right on everything. He does believe stuff like I don't believe what he believes on global warming at all. I think he's off the reservation on that stuff. But he really, truly believes it. And he's not playing games. He has an authentic belief, and that authenticity, I think, connects to a lot of voters across the spectrum. You see it a lot in the middle. You see it at some degree on the right. And if you look at RFK Jr.'s policy prescriptions, a lot of them look like traditional Democratic positions, right? Like environmental justice, anti-war, right? Even the vaccine stuff, which, you know, for a very long time was not a right-wing position. It was kind of across the board. You saw a lot of people like Jenny McCarthy and, lots of left-wing Jim Carrey talking about this stuff all the time. It was a lot of Hollywood celebrities talked about that. And those people still exist in the Democratic Party. They're just looking at their candidate and saying, wait, we're supposed to want the war in Ukraine now? Like, wait, all of a sudden we're all of a sudden for all these foreign conflicts. I don't understand. Now we're going to force everyone to do all these things that are the opposite of what we believed all this time. You know, the protecting the border is something that RFK Jr. has talked about. And that was the traditional Democratic position 20 or 30 years ago. We can't let low-cost workers come across the borders and hurt our union jobs. Well, that's still where RFK Jr. is. He hasn't abandoned those positions. He's been there the whole time, and he truly believes it. Where you look at Joe Biden from day to day, if he believes anything, it's hard to tell what it is other than enriching his own family.
Now he sounds like Nicole Hannah-Jones when it comes to fighting crime. Meanwhile, he was the one who sponsored the crime bill. It's ridiculous. And RFK Jr., I mean, you can go back and look at his positions, but I agree with you. He's, in another way, very skeptical of the security state, which used to be a Democratic position, no longer. Guys, stand by. They stay with me. They'll be back in 2 minutes. Look, you did the tough thing during COVID. You paid your people and pulled your business through the pandemic. And now doing the tough thing could qualify you for up to $26,000 per employee at covidtaxrelief.org. Government funds are available to reward companies with 2 or more employees who stayed open during COVID. This is not a loan, and you don't have to pay it back. The program's complicated, but no one knows more about it than the CPAs and tax experts at covidtaxrelief.org. You pay nothing up front. They do all the work and share a percentage of the cash they get you. Businesses of all types, including nonprofits and churches, can qualify, including those who took PPP loans, even if you had increases in sales. You did the tough thing for your employees during COVID. Now let covidtaxrelief.org help get you up to $26,000 per employee. Visit covidtaxrelief.org. That's covidtaxrelief.org, covidtaxrelief.org. Guys, the attacks on RFK Jr., that he's a conspiracy theorist, ramp up dramatically by the day. And he sat with David Remnick of The New Yorker, who tried to get around really getting into what RFK Jr. has said about vaccines in a clever, though totally dishonest way, because it's a lot of work to take him on vaccines, because he spent his life researching them, litigating them, and has a wealth of knowledge that no reporter is ever going to have. Trust me, David Remnick, some of us spent weeks preparing for our interview with RFK Jr. so that we could challenge him. That's called your job. But here is how The New Yorker chose to handle it. Listen to this.
I'll be very honest with you. I don't want to engage you in the deep detail on the question of vaccinations and your belief stated in the past that vaccines are responsible for autism to some degree. Do you not have any second thoughts about this?
I've never shifted on it. I want good testing for the vaccines, and I want good science. You say that scientists don't believe that. Well, the scientists at one point all believed that the COVID vaccine prevented transmission. And when I said, no, they don't prevent transmission, because I read the monkey studies in May of 2020. And I said, these vaccines should be dead in the water. They won't prevent transmission. And I was deplatformed.
He was. That's true. How lazy. I will say David starts it with, I have a child who's got autism. I mean, honestly, most of us know somebody who's like in their immediate family who's got a child with autism. This is such a widespread problem for families now. He's not unique, with all due respect to him and his child. It doesn't give him a particular insight on what causes autism. And RFK Jr. has stated his belief on the relationship, he basically thinks it's a ubiquitous problem. It's like the pollutants are everywhere. The vaccines for a long time had mercury. Now they have aluminum. The kids are swimming in a toxic stew in modern day America in a way they weren't when we were all kids. That's what he says. But Remnick is too lazy to go there. He's got to play the card about his own child. So, I've got a horse in this race, and you're not worth debating on it because, your views are just downright dangerous still.
Yeah, I mean, why bother for, getting ready for an interview when it's much easier to do that thing? Because everyone in the media, of course, will cheer it on when you say, well, I'm not going to engage you on this. This, of course, we saw this with the Joe Rogan debate story from a couple of weeks ago. You actually get cheering and adulation from the media for avoiding these types of conversations. And look, I think when it comes down to it, people get really passionate about this issue on both sides. I think one of the big problems we found in this country recently, this is a new discovery that I thought was kind of the foundation of the country, that we avoided this type of problem. If you have a situation like, for example, the vaccine, and you tell people, hey, here's the information that we have, here's what it looks like, you can look at it yourself and you can make your own determination of whether you would like to use it or not. That is a really American approach to something like this, where you say, hey, look, we're going to have different some people are going to say, I think this is nuts. It's not been tested long enough. I want to see the long-term ramifications. Other people are going to say, look, I've got a health problem and I'm really worried about COVID and I'm going to take it. If you put people in that position, everyone can live together. You can have a country that is civilized and not attacking each other and going nuts all the time and trying to ban their opponents. When you start forcing people to take it, when you ban their speech, when you fire them from their jobs, when you remove their livelihoods by enforcing the choice onto them, that is where we get into a problem. And honestly, I thought that was the real basic agreement we all had together in this country. I thought it was one of the reasons why we thrived as a nation, letting people make their own decisions about what they want to do with their own lives with very limited guardrails. We've gone away from that. RFK Jr. has been a big victim of this over the past couple of years, but he's not the only one. We see it across speech. We see it all over the place. This is the type of thing that if we reverse this and go back to a situation where we prioritize personal liberty over the government making these decisions for you, everybody is better off.
It's such a lazy way to have an argument or challenge a knowledgeable guest, Dave, right? Like, you're a reporter, you understand. If you want to go there with RFK Jr. on vaccines, go there. But do your homework first. Don't just say, I'm above you, you're a nutcase, you're dangerous, so I'm just going to point out to my audience how effed up you are and then get you to briefly comment and we'll move on. That is intellectual laziness.
Oh, it's worse than laziness, because the purpose of this is to delegitimize not just RFK Jr. on the vaccine question, but RFK Jr. across the board. RFK Jr. will say things that almost any other Democrat won't say, right? Stu pointed out his criticism of the war in Ukraine. Another one is RFK came out and said biological men shouldn't be in women's sports. Find me another Democrat. Find me any elected official in the Democrat Party who believes this thing that the vast majority of Americans believe. The vast majority of Americans look at that basic unfairness and they say, well, obviously, Leah Thomas shouldn't be in the swimming pool with these women. RFK is very dangerous because he'll say so. And when you have that kind of a danger, the way that the progressive left tries to take care of it is by saying, well, look at how dangerous this person is. If you even listen to this person or engage with this person, then you're part of the problem. So you have to not hear what they're saying at all. Unfortunately, at the moment for them, I think RFK Jr.'s messages are starting to penetrate a little bit. And these are issues that they're going to have to try to honestly deal with and not just deflect in this rather shameful way.
It's super fun to watch him out there and, doing an intellectual battle because he's got the goods. Like, I've been on the other side of him trying to press, trying to make sure his arguments were sound. He has got the goods. And by the way, he talks openly about how he vaccinated all of his children. It's not like he knows that the vaccines don't directly cause autism. He vaccinated all of his children and they don't have autism. He's not saying that. He's offering it as something that we should be looking at, that the combination of toxins in our environment that we give to kids at young ages could be potentially problematic for them health-wise, autism, et cetera. And so it's a much more nuanced message than the media would have us believe. Okay, I've got to ask you, Dave, about Moms for Liberty, because it's yet another example of the dishonest media trying to ruin someone they perceive as as an adversary and an effective one. It's similar to what they did doing to Casey DeSantis, what they're doing to RFK Jr. I love Moms for Liberty. It was founded by two moms down in Orlando, Tiffany Justice. She invited me to go to, I think it was either their first or their second ever conference. And I went because I believed in their mission, even though they were just getting started. And I continue to believe in their mission. Now they're huge. And you've got all sorts of hit pieces on them, including the Southern Poverty Law Center calling them an extremist group. Media Matters for America has been all over them, attacking her for serving almond milk at the convention. Tiffany tweeted out, "I'm lactose intolerant. Does that make me a lib?" Okay, that's fine. But what do you make of what happened down there and the media reaction to it? It was in Philadelphia, the conference.
The Media Matters thing was really remarkable because they sent, along with a couple other outlets did this too, but they sent a reporter undercover. When I went and covered it with a media credential and sort of played by the rules. Media Matters says, we'll send an undercover agent. We'll find the dark underbelly of this, white supremacist organ. And they found none of it. I mean, they found nothing. And that's why the author spent 2,000 words writing about the food, literally. One of the most telling aspects of covering this was when I went out into the protests, right? And the hardcore protesters you can't talk to. They don't want a conversation. But no. I did find this one older guy, maybe mid to late 60s. I put this in my column. I said to him, he's holding a sign that says, "Moms for Liberty are fascists." And I said, okay, introduce myself. I'm here with Fox. Why do you think they're fascists? And he looked at me and he said, you should really ask my wife, who's over with the main body there, because she's a librarian. And I said, well, okay, but you're calling these people fascists. Shouldn't you know why? And he said, again, you really need to ask my wife. That's what they're up against. And, I asked some of the moms, I said, does it hurt when these people in person, not on Twitter, these people are shouting at you, calling you a Nazi and a white supremacist? And most of them said, no, it's water off a duck's back. Who cares what they say? But some of them, I think, were more honest with me and said, yeah, it sucks when someone yells in your face that you're a Nazi. It hurts emotionally. And it really speaks to a sickness in our society that I think is mostly on the left and something that we really need to knock off.
They'll get used to it. I feel like the ones who started Moms for Liberty are already used to it. The ones who are feeling hurt are going to get over it fast because it happens every day when you take the wrong side of these issues. I cannot let you go without talking about the new Miss Netherlands. The Miss Netherlands is Ricky Valerie Collet, crowned the winner of Miss Nederland 2023 on Saturday. Yay, yay. Go Ricky. Oh, wait. I'll give you one look at Ricky and the first runner-up. Okay, one look at Ricky and the first runner-up. We have the full screen picture. Stand by. There we go. Right? Now, Ricky's here on the left, gentlemen. The first runner-up is on the right.
Knew. Mm-hmm. We knew which one it was, Megyn. You didn't have to.
Can anyone take a guess as to why this person on the left beat this amazingly beautiful person on the right in the beauty pageant? Any thoughts? Any guesses?
Gee, I don't know. What could it possibly be? Could it possibly be that it's not? There was not a fair competition here because one was a man and one was a woman.
That used to work in our favor.
Talent competition. Maybe it was the talent competition was like basketball and he dominated. Maybe that's, I don't know.
Was there a powerlifting segment?
Yeah, maybe that's what I mean. Feats of strength, right? Yeah. That would give you an advantage, I think.
It's like there isn't a woman's space that people like Ricky don't want to take over. That would have been a nice spot for an actual woman to win in, to compete in, to potentially advance in. You could win Miss Universe, opens up all sorts of opportunity. And now you have men coming in saying, I want it. Yeah, I want it for me. And as my friends Carrie and Britt would say,
no. It's a no. It's a hard no. Hard no.
Former beauty pageants themselves. Is this the future of women's beauty pageants, Dave Marcus?
Yeah. I mean, the immediate future, yeah. I mean, of course it is. Are we going to break out of this spell at some point in the more distant future? I sure hope so. But yeah, I mean, for now, you're going to continue to see this. It's crazy.
I don't know. It's an obvious affirmative action case I mean, there's zero chance that Ricky won because Ricky was the most beautiful person at the pageant. Hello, I just proved it. And it's a beauty contest. It is a pure beauty contest. This is absolutely outrageous. He shouldn't have been allowed in. And the first runner-up should be advanced. Here's the perfect comment that Ricky posted about it. I did it. It's unreal. Correct. Well said, Ricky. I gotta go, guys. Great to see you.
Thank you, Megyn.
Thank you.
We'll do it again soon. Coming up, 2 authors and experts who have a very clear piece of advice for you on how to address your health and well-being. I love they're just few nuggets for you to do if you only have 20 minutes a day to focus on your health. They'll just give you the super quick nuggets that you can take away. Jillian Michaels recommended this pair to us. You're going to love them. Stand by. Are you struggling to make your health a priority? You know that you should, but actually doing it can be a struggle. Do you think it's too overwhelming? Are you too tired? Is it too time-consuming? Hello, I hear you. Well, husband and wife founders of Mind Body Green may have the solution for you. Colleen and Jason Wachab have cut through the health noise and have written a book that makes getting healthy accessible and genuinely enjoyable. Think of it. The book is called The Joy of Well-Being, a practical guide to a happy, healthy, and long life. And Jason and Colleen are here to share how we can all reach our maximum well-being. Colleen and Jason, welcome to the show. Great to have you.
Thanks so much for having us.
This is perfectly timed, I can say, for me, because I have been trying to get in shape. The past couple of months, I've been trying to exercise more. And I do this one thing. It's called The Class. I enjoy it. It's very hard. It's hard. And now that I'm down at the beach, it's beautiful out. And you can walk for miles and get some fresh air. You can see the ocean. You can see some trees. You can see some people. And I'm really liking that. But it's not quite as taxing on me as doing even just 1 hour of The Class. And I have been feeling guilty about not doing the super taxing thing and instead doing this other thing, which I can go for an hour and 20 minutes to. I can go for longer. And your book relieved me of this burden and just reinforced to me that this is actually a great alternative and maybe even a preferable one. So let's kick it off there on why am I enjoying this walk so much and why is it better for me potentially than an hour of an exercise class?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. So much of our world is a world in health and wellness of exclusion and adding and not editing or integration. And I think so many of us are busy with our lives, work and family. And, we don't fare so well in fitness. And I think January 13th was National Quitters Day at the gym. So January 13th, we've quit. And our thesis is the big why is because it doesn't bring us joy. And we have unrealistic expectations. And those practices, protocols, or modalities don't actually fit into our life. So you mentioned walking on the beach in the summer. That sounds amazing. Walking is probably the most underrated fitness modality out there, period. Walking in nature, even better. Walking in nature with a friend or family member, interval walking, increasing, decreasing speed has tremendous benefits. And, walking is something, if you enjoy, you should do it. There are significant benefits in terms of preventing cognitive decline. There was a great study in the 1940s that looked at transportation workers in London, and they compared the conductors who were moving to the drivers. And guess who had much lower incidence of cardiovascular disease? The conductors who were constantly moving. There's study after study promoting the benefits of walking, specifically in nature.
And the nature piece of it can extend your lifespan. I mean, it can literally extend your lifespan if you can see a tree, if you can see water. It's like back when we were kids. We kind of had it all figured out, whether we knew it or not.
Absolutely. And I think there's study after study that really speaks to the power of nature and what it does for us in terms of all the longevity benefits, in terms of our mental health. And we're facing a mental health epidemic right now. So it is vastly underrated.
And for so many people, spending time in nature can be a sort of spiritual connection that we're all missing right now. And one of our favorite experts within the field, Dr. Lisa Miller, has some, really incredible research that girls who grow up with a high connection to spirituality are 80% more protected against depression. And it's not just during childhood, it's throughout their entire lives. And what I love about Dr. Miller's language is she has such a generous definition of spirituality. It's not the, woo-woo stuff that we all might frown our eyes on. It can be organized religion. It can be spending time in nature. It can be volunteering. It's really just this connection to something bigger than ourselves that we are all looking for right now.
And what's
that
even better
so huge.
is the science promotes this idea that it's protective during one's entire lifetime. It's not exclusive to childhood or a certain period of time. So it really makes the case, given the mental health epidemic, to focus on spirituality as something being protective against our mental health and depression.
And when we're doing exactly the opposite, of course, we're trying to push spirituality, yes, and also religion out of the public square. We discourage it. The country's getting less and less spiritual instead of more and more, creating a vacuum that we fill with other unhealthy things, whether it's drinking or radical ideologies. It could be any of these things.
Absolutely.
And we see some of this, tribalism play out even within the health and wellness space. 10, 20 years ago, I wouldn't have thought there would be so much anger within this space. But as people move away from organized religions, they're putting that same fervor, they're putting that same passion towards their health and wellness ideologies, which is why we're not really able to have a civil discourse around simple questions like, what's the right diet for me? And instead of being open to science and open to new ideas, we found that people are extraordinarily inflexible. And the one thing we recommend is that the only thing to be rigid about is being flexible.
Right. And I definitely want to talk about food, but let's stay on exercise since I kicked it off there. Because you two have your own stories about how you made a reference to it a second ago, how you used to approach this issue until injury and just the realities of that kind of dedication caught up with you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so for me specifically, I almost had back surgery, and it started my journey and ended up the big part of the story of why I founded Mind Body Green. I had an old college basketball injury, and I was running another startup that wasn't doing so well, and I flew over 100,000 miles domestic in 1 year. You can't see from the camera, or listeners can't tell, I'm 6'7". So me in a coach seat is not good for me or the person in front of me.
Wow.
It turns out that the basketball injury combined with stress and flying, I had 2 extruded discs to my lower back, pressing on my sciatic nerve, the classic L4, L5, S1. I couldn't walk. My right leg was like a lightning rod. Excruciating, and walking brings me tremendous joy. Went to a back doctor, a surgeon, and he said, you need surgery. No surprise. I have nothing against back surgery, but I believe in lifestyle modification first. And the success rates with back surgery aren't good. So I sought a second opinion. That doctor said the same thing. He said, you need back surgery. And it was almost like an afterthought. He said, you know what, maybe some yoga or therapy could help. Colleen and I were dating at the time. She had a yoga practice. So I said, all right, I'll try it. And a little bit of yoga, 5 to 10 minutes in the morning and evening, I started to feel better. And over the course of 6 months, I completely healed. And the yoga was a big part of it. It wasn't the only part. I changed my diet. I went from a guy who consumed way too much meat and alcohol, so much so my face is on the wall of the Palm Steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan next to Joe Namath and Adam Sandler. Still eat meat, but not as much. Make sure it's grass-fed. Probably more about the martinis back then. But started to evolve diet, started to look at stress, sleep, the environment, all the toxins, forever chemicals are in the news, unfortunately, again, with the tap water. It's really unfortunate.
Oh, it's like 80% of our tap water has forever chemicals in it. Keep going.
Yeah, terrible. Half the tap water in America. And it was very clear to me that true well-being was this blend of mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, and environmental well-being. They were all connected. One word, Mind Body Green. And so that was a big part of my healing journey. And it's evolved to my focus is on longevity today. I'm 48 years old. Men in my family have a terrible track record here. My father died of heart disease at 47. Both grandfathers died early as well. One 49 heart disease, the other 44 cancer. And so we have 2 little girls, age 6 and 4. I want to be around for a long time. And this is my passion. And what's been so exciting about the science is so much of it points to practices, protocols and modifications that are low cost or zero cost and require minimal time and effort.
Amen.
And that's exciting because the big objection to our world, the health and wellness world, is I don't have the time, I don't have the resources. Well, there's good news. There's so much you can do if you have minimal time or minimal resources.
And it doesn't have to be as complicated as you think it is. You know, you say like, oh, eat keto. It's like, oh my God, my eyes glaze over. I don't know how to do that. I don't know if I have the time to even find out. So you have practical recommendations along this front. I want to tell you something. I wanted to tell the audience this and I just haven't had the chance, but my back was really starting to hurt me recently because thanks to my exercise class, it turns out I may have been overdoing it a little. And so I said to Abby, my assistant, I'm like, can you get me in to see this guy? Because my primary care physician gave me a name. Well, it's a long story, but the long story short is it took me about 45 minutes into the visit to realize I was at a chiropractor. I thought I was going to see an orthopedic doctor. I'm like, oh, you're a chiropractor? I'm at a chiropractor's office? Okay, great. Anyway, I don't need surgery. I have a disc that's kind of getting pushed back, you know, but it's not like out and it could get pushed back in. And he was explaining to me that the devil in back care is this: rounded shoulders forward. How so many office people sit every day, right? And he said, you need to sit, you know, shoulders back. It's basically like, I mean, forgive me, but my son gave me this model. He said he thinks of it sometimes. It's almost like you picture lasers coming out of your breasts or your chest if you're a man. Yep. Like, you know, you're kind of, but it helps. Shoulders back, lasers out. And he said if you can walk around like that for 90% of your day, your back is going to get better. You're not going to need surgery. I can give you some exercise to do as well. And I said, well, it really hurts the muscles in my upper back when I do that for too long. And he's like, yep, it's going to hurt for like a month. And then it's not going to hurt anymore. And oh my God, he was right. The upper back no longer hurts when I'm sitting up perfectly with great posture. And the lower back is getting better. No surgery, no interventions, just an honest guy who was like, stop rounding your back so much. He even said, just final pro tip, I'm like, what about reading in bed? Because I'm all rounded. He said, my wife, not him, but he said, my wife is so vigilant about this. She gets a music stand and she sits on a little couch in their bedroom and she reads off the music stand. So determined is she not to have the rounded back, not to mention the quadruple chin we all get from looking down all the time. I thought these are great tips. I want to share these, but it's right up your alley.
I will forever remember the lasers analogy.
It works. Who knew? And even like you go down to like tie your shoe, you know, or here at the beach, I've been playing pickle. Can you hear me? So I think I unplugged. Here at the beach, I've been playing pickle, and I screwed up my microphone. I screwed up something. Anyway, and there, you know, I just go straight down. I look like if I had back surgery, but I go straight down to pick up the ball. Anyway, it's making a big difference. Let's get back to the exercise plan. Go ahead.
I think you're making a great point. You're outlining integration. I think we're almost brainwashed. The industry has brainwashed into believing we need to add into our existing day-to-day, when the reality is we can integrate these practices into our life. So whether that's taking a walking call, whether that is doing some push-ups and sit-ups when you've got 10 minutes, it is possible to take these little micro moments. They add up during the day. You don't have to do much, whether it's taking the stairs. We have a personal rule, less than 5 flights, we take the stairs. There's a lot of talk about zone 2 training, about the cardiovascular benefits. You don't have to go out and do a fancy VO2 max test. Your audience is probably like, what the hell is that? To get an understanding of how to get in zone 2. Zone 2 is essentially being able to hold a conversation, but being slightly out of breath. You can do that on the stairs. You can do that with a fast-paced walk. The benefits are unbelievable, and you can figure out how to integrate that into your existing day.
I will tell you on my fast walk that I like, I'll walk 3 blocks and then I'll do like a light jog for 3 blocks and then I'll walk 3 blocks. And at first I was kind of ashamed to go from the run, not a run, but a jog back into the walk. You know, you don't want people to see you. You feel like you're a quitter. Now I wear it loud and proud. I'm like, this is my interval training. This makes this whole thing possible for me because I could never go for just a straight jog. I just don't have the knees or the back for it. And I'm really enjoying that. So it's anyway, bit by bit, I'm learning some of this stuff.
But that's amazing. You should do things that you enjoy. And if running brings you joy, run.
I didn't say that.
The last time I ran was the last basketball game I played in 1998. If you see me running, call the police because I am in trouble. It does not bring me joy. I won't do it.
You went too far. I wouldn't say enjoy, but I recognize it's better if I can get a little heart rate going in there. Can we talk about cold therapy? That was another thing that you guys recommend that I find fascinating. This is kind of an easy way. Like we're doing the easy stuff that, that's what your book is all about. What is cold therapy, Colleen, and why do I need it? How does it change my life?
Yeah, so cold therapy is all the rage right now, and it's one of the hormetic stressors, which so many people are incorporating into their routines. And I think there's two different types of stressors. And one of the reasons why we talked about cold therapy is because anyone can emulate it. You don't need one of the $4,000 cold plunges that you see on the internet, but you can do it with the joy of a cold shower. Cold exposure can also activate brown fat. There's lots of great science behind it, and people with brown fat had a lower incidence of type 2 diabetes, lower incidence of
brown fat?
Abnormal cholesterol, and a lower risk of coronary artery disease, hypertension, and congenital heart failure. One of the things we are also super transparent about in this book is that we do not do cold therapy. We acknowledge that there is a ton of amazing science, but it is something that does not bring us joy. I have Raynaud's. I get really cold. I will literally start to shrivel and my body will turn purple. So we do a lot of things, but I think at the end of the day, we all have to be adults. We have to take responsibility, be the CEOs of our own health and well-being, and understand what are going to be the needle movers for us on our own journeys.
But I like the thing about the shower because I don't want to get into an Arctic, pit of water from the snow. But I have heard, and occasionally will do, the hot shower, and just for the last 60 seconds, you turn it cold. And I'm in there like, but you come out feeling like you had a cup of coffee. You feel invigorated. Do you get any benefit from that? Is that enough?
You do. And I think our view is everything counts to some degree. And I think with cold, if it's 30 seconds or a minute, you're going to get some benefit. And you do start to have diminishing returns if you try to overdo it.
Okay. All right. Well, this is good to know. So I like that. That's a good, you don't have to go to, the mountains. You can do it in your shower in the morning. How about that? The other super easy thing, and I've been thinking about it all morning, is breathing through your nose.
This is probably one of our favorites. And we started the book with breath, primarily due to, I had a pulmonary embolism over 10 years ago when I had literally showers of clots in my lungs. And it was the first time in my life that I really thought about one of the most basic things we do, which is breathe. We breathe 17,000 to 30,000 times a day. And more than half of the population is breathing all wrong. If you're not sure if you're breathing wrong, if you snore, it's probably a sign that something's off. So there's about 50 to 80% of adults that exhibit what we call dysfunctional breathing habits. Anxiety, allergies, sleep apnea. And, the key you really hit on is breathing through your nose or nostril breathing. There's a ton of health benefits to it in terms of filtering out the bad stuff, increasing CO2 tolerance. As someone who runs high in anxiety, I like it because breathing through your nose activates the parasympathetic or the rest and digest system. So you are instantaneously ushering in a really welcome sense of calm. And we respond to tools that can be used IRL. So not the tools necessarily that you do before work or after work in elaborate morning routines that so many of us just don't have the time for, but what you can actually do when you're in the middle of a stressful meeting, when you're driving and, someone cuts you off, is just to instantly start breathing through your nose. You can practice when you're doing the dishes so that you can build your way up to being able to breathe through your nose and nostril breathing at night.
And it actually does have something to do with all the filter that the air has to go through, like your nose hairs, but even beyond your nose hairs, stuff happens in the back there that will filter the air before it gets to your lungs in a way that's not going to happen if you mouth breathe.
Absolutely. It filters out bad stuff like bacteria and viruses. So it's just a good idea across the spectrum of health to mental health.
So fascinating. Who knew? And again, we'll get to food, but the other thing that's great, and I mentioned it right off the top of the show with our pal David Marcus, is socialization. Socialization. It's crazy how beneficial this is. Jason, you can truly extend your lifespan. It's worse for you to be lonely than it is to be a big boozer, a big smoker, or even obese.
Yeah, this is such a huge one, given the state of the country we're in right now. 24% of young adults under the age of 30 suffer high levels of loneliness. 1 in 7 men don't have a single friend. 1 in 10 women don't have a single friend. 20, and if you think about, okay, so why does this matter? In terms of increasing one's odds of premature mortality, lacking social connection is slightly worse than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Being lonely is twice as worse as having 6 drinks a day. That's 42 drinks a week. 3 times as worse as being physically inactive, 4 times as worse as being obese. One study, researchers even found that those who were socially isolated were 45% more likely to get sick with a common cold. And so, look, nutrition and exercise are paramount. We should always be talking about them, but we need to talk more about connection, specifically because of the loneliness epidemic and the mental health epidemic. We all need IRL connection. And you know what? There was a 2019 study out of Cigna. This is pre-pandemic that said only half of Americans were having meaningful daily face-to-face social interactions. God knows what that looks like in 2023. Scary.
There are so many nutrition and fitness influencers in the health and well-being space, and we want to create a resurgence of social connection influencers, inspiring people to get together IRL, because not all connection is created equal. So if you are texting someone and thinking, oh, I've got a friends, I've got a network, I've got a community, it literally does not have the same impact on oxytocin, the love hormone, or in terms of decreasing your cortisol levels as it would if you had the tender touch of a friend or a loved one who was nearby and who was able to comfort you when you're in the midst of hard times. And as we look now with such a scary mental health crisis, 60% of high school girls dealing with, some sort of depression, we really need to draw upon these tools and to help teach everyone how to better weather the inevitable ups and downs that life entails.
You say pick up the phone. It can be phone. Phone's better than text.
Yeah, and I think this is an area where men are traditionally way worse than women, myself included. And I think, phone, yes, but this is where texting and social media can be to your advantage. I think, there used to be 20 years ago, the awkward moment of picking up a phone and then someone doesn't recognize your voice. Now it's a simple text. Hey, so-and-so, it's Jason. Been too long, been thinking about you, would love to reconnect. Right away, you'll gauge their appetite with their response. And, you're probably going to be pleasantly surprised. And I think that's something that can go a long way. And it's something I'm personally working on.
I've told the audience about my Nana. She lived to 101. She was born in 1915. And she was overweight. She had never exercised a day in her life. She existed in her last 2 or 3 decades solely on processed food. I mean, we gave her real food, but she just preferred the other stuff. And so why did she live to 101? She was social. She lived on her own all the way through 100. She walked up and down the hall. She chatted with everybody. She was hilarious. And I'm telling you, I'm convinced that this is why she lived as long as she did.
Well, I think you're onto something. And in the book, we talk about the Rosetto study, which we discovered in the process of researching and writing the book. And Rosetto was this small town in rural Pennsylvania in the 1950s. And this is when heart disease arrives in America, but not in Rosetto. The rate of heart attacks in people over 65 was half that of the nation. Men under 55, no heart attacks. So they said, what's going on in Rosetto? They seem to be immune to heart disease. Well, they were smoking, they were drinking, they were eating lots of pasta and meatballs. This makes no sense. Pretty much any wellness expert you'd ever have on your show would say, do not do these things. And so when they took a deeper look, Rosetto had incredibly strong social connections. Multi-generational living was extraordinarily common. The drinking, the smoking, and the meatballs was in the context of parties, parades, enjoying wine and food with family and friends. They were just so incredibly connected. And guess what? In the 1960s, people started to move away and heart disease arrived and caught up with the national average.
A sad ending, but we can all change that in our own lives and sort of try to get more communal. All right, let's talk about food. It confuses me. I know you guys have a good point, which is that the science on nutrition is too young to actually stake anything on. Is that why every other week I'm being told to eat a different way by people who I actually like and respect, but then everything's reversed. It's like, it's all red meat. No, don't eat any red meat. It's all plant-based. No, don't eat. They're covered in pesticides. It's all like, I don't know what to eat.
I don't think you're alone. I think
share your confusion.
Yes, I think this is a big problem. I think what some of the extremes have in common is that they're avoiding ultra-processed foods, and that's probably the reason why they're feeling better. And look, the consequences of eating ultra-processed foods are dire. There was a study out of France that showed that a 10% increase in consumption of highly processed foods led to a 14% increased risk of death. Bad news for us is 2/3 of calories that our children consume are ultra-processed foods.
Yes.
And I think I encourage everyone in the book, get some baseline lab work. I list all my extensive lab work that anyone can reference. And I think that's a good place to start. There are some people who could eat grass-fed meat all day and their lipid panel is fine. There are others who look at meat and their lipid panel goes through the roof. And I just encourage people to get some baseline labs. But I think to simplify, it's eating real food and really starting there.
And what is real food?
I think real food is the perimeter of the grocery store. It's vegetables, it's fruits, it's nuts, it's seeds, it's meat, it's seafood, it's chicken, it's eggs. It is not highly processed.
Stuff that can go bad.
Correct. Although we are big proponents, and this is where the accessibility piece comes in. Look, when stuff goes bad, that's a risk. If I have a limited budget, I don't want to have to buy arugula and worry it's going to go bad in 3 days. There's frozen options. We are huge proponents of buying frozen food. You get more for your money and it lasts.
And don't frozen vegetables actually retain more of their nutrients than some of the stuff that gets imported and might be sitting out at the grocer?
Yeah, I think that's another question. The whole produce area can quickly become an episode of Portlandia in terms of how local it is and where it comes from. The reality is, I think, use your common sense of where you live. If you're getting strawberries in New York in the winter, they're probably coming in from somewhere. And I think that's at the end of the day, shop for what's meaningful to you and your diet and try to make decisions on seasonality if you're able to.
So what about these fad diets? Do you guys have, well, I don't know if we can call them fads because they've been around for a while now, whether it's paleo or keto. I could go down the list. How do you feel about those?
I think it goes back to that tribalism within the wellness world. And, we have such a complicated relationship with all of these wellness fads, which is why we intentionally didn't call the book The Joy of Wellness, because it has just become a cacophony of voices that, even people like us who are entrenched in this can't understand what to do. And when we look at the wellness world right now, we see a lot of coastal elites pushing trends. On the one hand, you've got Kardashian wellness, which feels like an extension of the beauty and fashion world. And then on the other hand, you have the biohacking bros in Malibu who are pushing the latest tools and gadgets. And if you have the tools and resources to explore, fantastic. But, we also love these wellness modalities because they've had a profound impact on our own lives. I drew upon these principles when I was healing from my own pulmonary embolism, but the ones that we continue to go back to are the ones that are time-tested, affordable, and don't take a ton of time. And we want to shift the wellness conversation from one of fad diets, of fads in general, of restriction, to literally being one of joy and abundance and integration instead of addition.
Now, what we hear from so many people is plant-based, plant-based, plant-based. And I don't even know what that means. My husband sent me an article yesterday that he found interesting. It was on Yahoo. And it was like, some guy whose biological age is 20 years younger than his actual age. And all he does is intermittent fasting. He doesn't drink. And he only eats plant-based foods. And then it listed like oatmeal. I'm like, is oatmeal plant? I don't understand how to eat plant-based. I don't get it. I thought it was salad. What is plant-based?
Well, unfortunately, plant-based, the term has been hijacked. Impossible Burgers and Beyond Meat are technically plant-based, but those are highly processed foods. It's vegan junk food. They are not healthy. If we're talking about, again, eating fresh produce, different story, but unfortunately we are not. And I think with some of the longevity conversation, the biohacking has sort of taken this to a place that does not bring anyone joy. And we're trying to reframe the conversation. I think the longevity conversation, if you think about it, is extending years. Say let's live to 100, and then longevity evolved to health span, which is quality of life, absence of disease. So in a perfect world, you live 99 years with no disease. You're mobile, you're fit, you're active, you're doing the things you want to do, and then you rapidly decline overnight. Maybe it's a heart attack. We like joy span. Right. We like this idea of bringing back joy. What's the point of living to 100 if you're not fun? If your kids don't talk to you, if you're miserable, what's the point? And I think when you start to look at emotional well-being, the questions are a lot more difficult. If you have to think twice about who am I supposed to call at midnight when I'm in dire need of help, you're probably gonna have to ask some hard questions that require some work. And ultimately, you may do all the things that are extending your life, but does it bring you happy? If you're going out to a birthday dinner and you're afraid to have cake, we would argue that negates the benefit of not having the cake. Have the cake when you're celebrating in Rosetto style. Maybe don't do it every single day, but you need to enjoy life. You need to bring back joy.
Yes, I mean, I watch what I eat because I'm just vain, and I also want to live a long and healthy life. But we went to France for 2 weeks, and I ate what I wanted. I wasn't going to turn down the croissants over there or the amazing bread with the butter and the delicious sauces. I mean, and the cheese. I had it all, and I'm fine. It's like net. That's 2 weeks. If you're living a healthy life in general, you can get away with that.
As you should. When in Rome, eat the pizza. When in France, have the cheese. You should do so. I think you would be miserable, and so would your family, if you decided to abstain from all the French goodness. That would not make for a meaningful, memorable vacation in France.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about, what do you guys eat on a daily basis? Or is this not a good question because you're saying it can all be individual, and, what brings me joy and within reason works?
I mean, I think you're onto that one. On one podcast, we did get asked, what do you eat? And you hate it, but it's so good for you, so you eat it anyways. And we're like, well, nothing. Because everything that we do eat on a daily basis, brings us some joy. In general, we're thoughtful about being, having enough plant-forward meals, so having enough fiber in our diets. And then we're also really thoughtful about protein intake.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. When we were asked that question about which healthy food we do not enjoy, Colleen said, well, Jason, that's sardines. And I said, I actually really like sardines, and sardines are incredibly nutrient dense. So I think for us, it's try to eat a lot of fresh food. Protein has become a focus in our quest for being healthy as we age. There was a stat we came across while writing the book, which was really eye-opening. And it's that 1 in 4 people over the age of 65 fall. And if you fall once, you are twice as likely to fall again. And if you fall and break your hip, there's a 30 to 40% chance you'll die within a year. And it's not necessarily from the fall. It's from, complications from surgery, maybe an infection, or maybe it's the depression that ensues after being immobile. And anecdotally, that one we've seen with friends and family members. And so that one hit home, and where this segues to exercise and nutrition, so what do you want to do as you age? One, you want to be mobile, you want to be agile, you want to be strong, so that, if you're going down the stairs, and first of all, you don't fall, that you have the mobility, or maybe if you do, you have the strength to grab something and hold on so you don't fall, or you want the muscle in terms of armor to break the fall so you don't break that hip. And that's for us is a big change. We're focused a lot more on resistance training as we age. And that means also upping our protein intake to make sure we maintain and build lean muscle mass. And it's a protective factor. We are in Miami, so, we like going to the gym here, but it's really for longevity.
Can I just say one other point on this? When I turned 50, I'm 52 now, my doctor said, you got to go for a bone density test. It was just an x-ray where they took a look at my bones. And I had actual osteoporosis, not just osteoporia, whatever the thing is that I had some of that too. But in some places, my body, actual osteoporosis. But I had to get a shot once a month for 12 months. Insurance covered it. And then you have to take an oral medication for 2 years thereafter. It's completely reversed it. I no longer have osteoporosis. I would never have known that if I didn't have a great doctor. It's two-tiered medicine. We all know that. But I want the listeners to know, get a bone density test. Because if you have one of these issues, it is solvable. My endocrinologist said, this is what I love about being an endocrinologist. You can solve everything. And so here I am at 52, much healthier in the bone department than I was at 50, though I'm shorter. Colleen and Jason, thank you so much for writing this book. I want everybody to go out there and buy it. It's called The Joy of Well-Being. Well worth your time. All the best to you two.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And don't forget to our audience to join us tomorrow, because we're going to have our pals from the Fifth Column. They've got different views about RFKJ, and we'll get into those as well. And the left wants to tell us that the guy who was killed was a Michael Jackson impersonator. He's just a sweet guy, without referencing his long criminal history and threatening history and what the other passengers are saying about what he was doing on board. Well, now Daniel Penny comes out, this is again via the New York Post, and says, this had nothing to do with race. I am not a white supremacist. They're going right to their standard playbook, right? He can't just be a guy, even in their version could be, he overreacted. Right. He took it too far, right? He used extreme force. No, they've got to bring race into it for zero reason. There's not even an allegation of a word of racial animus, nothing. They just made it up because of the skin colors. He was asked if he has anything to be ashamed of. He said, I don't. I mean, I always do what I think is right. And then you've got this, Charlie, Al Sharpton, who inserts himself on every single one of these, who somehow gets to speak. He eulogizes Jordan Neely. Like, he didn't know Jordan Neely. Al Sharpton makes everything about himself, gets up there, and consistent with your theme of the left, they lie. They don't stick to the facts. They don't admit reality when it's staring them in the face. Tries to tell us there was zero provocation for what Daniel Penny did in getting Neely under control on that subway train. Listen to Al Sharpton at the funeral on Friday at SOT 7.
We can't live in a city where you can choke me to death with no provocation, no weapon, no threat, and you go home and sleep in your bed while my family got to put me in a cemetery. There must be equal justice under the law.
What do you make of it?
Oh, Al Charlatan. There is not a race hoax that he tries to insert himself into. For the people, first of all, I know this sounds bad. People that lose like 100 pounds immediately, I'm kind of like a little I miss fat Al Sharpton. I actually trusted him more. He was jollier. He's just become an angry, bitter, failed television, cable TV host. Anyway, that's mean. I don't know if that's mean or not. It's just true.
I don't know. Mean is when you say it with the intention of hurting someone. Then there's just truth.
I'm just being factual.
Then there's just truth.
Yeah. So look, for the Al Charlatan thing aside, let me focus on the Penny, because I think it's the Penny story, because I think it's really important. Megyn, you would remember this. Do you remember all the uproar over the Kitty Genovese story, where the young lady was raped, and there was this idea of where's the Good Samaritan? Right now, it turned out that some of it was misrepresented. For the younger listeners that don't know the story, it was allegedly a woman that was raped in an alleyway, and that like 30 or 40 onlookers heard it from their apartments, and they decided to do nothing. That was over-exaggerated, but it turned out to be like 4 or 5 people, right? And the question was, it was this moral outcry of, who are we as a city? Who are we as a place where we allow a bad thing to happen and nobody intervenes? And so now fast forward to this situation. First of all, Al Sharpton is a liar. Of course he is. He's made an entire career in the Tawana Brawley. I think that was the name of the situation, where he just he made up the entire, it was a total race hoax, right? It was 100%. A complete fabrication and lie. And no provocation. That man who died, the homeless individual, Jordan Neely, said, quote, "I'm ready to go back to jail." Megyn, I don't know about you, but if I was on a subway with my daughter and some lunatic said, "I'm ready to go back to jail," yeah, my fight or flight instincts would all of a sudden start to get heightened. Any rational person would. When a guy someone who says, "I'm ready to go back to jail," what are they saying? Is saying, "I'm ready to commit another crime." And how is the media representing it? How's AOC that he's some sort of Michael Jackson impersonator? This guy had dozens of priors. And so he's on a subway saying, I'm ready to go back to jail. And Daniel Penny, who's a good Samaritan and a hero, restrains him. His intent was not to kill him. Okay? It's a tragedy anytime anybody dies. At the same time, we can simultaneously say, you know what? Daniel Penny should walk free. Because this is what ends up happening. Aristotle said justice is the messiest of all the virtues. Therefore, you must have clear lines and laws of what is justice and who enforces justice. Citizen enforced justice is not the ideal, Megyn. You and I both agree. This is not how we want to live society. But when you allow anarcho-tyranny in the streets, which is a philosophical and political, let's say, mentality that is setting into our cities where we're willing to send prosecutorial power against Donald Trump, but the subways, you're on your own. And if you dare to stand up, then we're going to lock you in prison. Then you're going to get messy outcomes. It is unfortunate what happened. But Daniel Penny did what was necessary to protect the other passengers, and they have even come to support him. And so it really is an indictment of where New York is and where it's headed, where we're not going to touch you if you're a schizophrenic, crazy person on the subway. You're allowed to do whatever you want. You're allowed to hurl threats, obscenities, regardless of your priors. And possibly, by the way, Megyn, you know this, there is kind of a growing concern that one of these people might throw you onto the actual subway track in the way of a subway train. That is not an unfounded concern. And Daniel Penny decides to be a courageous good Samaritan and might face jail time for it. It is reprehensible, but yet another example of where urban America currently is.
This is another story, kind of like the Harry and Meghan one, which is about more than just this specific story.
That's right.
Where it represents so much that's wrong with the left today. You've got a city that won't take care of a homeless, deranged man like this Jordan Neely, who's been in and out of institutions, mental health institutions, over and over and over, but refuses to actually institutionalize somebody against their will. They refuse to do it. They think that that's a violation of civil liberties. They don't give a shit about the civil liberties of the 67-year-old woman whose orbital bone he broke, or the 7-year-old kid who he tried to kidnap. They're not concerned about their civil liberties. So the city won't take care of its own by locking up the deranged. Then they sick him on the subway with insufficient law enforcement when they know that this is a massive issue down on the subways right now. Then you have a courageous former a former Marine down there who decides to do the right thing to protect his fellow citizens. Race has absolutely nothing to do with it, but the left swoops in, tries to make it all about race, doesn't acknowledge its own failures as a governing force in the city of New York, the left. The city was not like this under Bloomberg, under Giuliani, independents and Republicans respectively. So refuses to acknowledge its ineptitude in running cities or what they've done to cops or demoralizing them and so on, increasing crime in the subway and elsewhere in New York. And then, I mean, like the cherry on top of the sundae, Charlie, you got the Sharpton thing swooping in, denying fact, no threat, no provocation. That's exactly the opposite of what everyone who has testified to the papers thus far has said, including third-party witnesses with no dog in the hunt. And then the final pièce de résistance, and that's AOC coming to the funeral, which has nothing to do with her, coming to the funeral and actually posing for photos with the public. Because what better time for a photo op than at the side of a dead man? That's really where you want to put on the pearly whites and nail your selfie. You know, get the right lighting. My left side's my best. I mean, do you have the casket in the background? I want it to look perfect. I want everybody to know. That's what she did.
That's correct. I think of that meme that is always circulated on Twitter. You've probably seen it, Megyn, where the one guy is like posing in front of the casket. Like that's AOC live at the funeral, like getting a selfie right in front of the casket. I mean, she doesn't care about him at all.
No.
AOC is Viva la Revolution. And racializing this situation, in her opinion, makes the revolution more likely. What is the revolution? The complete transformation and destruction of Western society. Western society, the country you and I grew up in, Megyn, would prioritize merit over race. It would prioritize rule of law over tribalism. It would prioritize individual sovereignty and rights over sectarianism and tribalism. She wants all that gone. And what she wants to replace it with, she hasn't really thought that deeply. Most of them haven't, by the way. I get that question all the time. Well, Charlie, it's all about deconstruction, tearing down. It's an arsenic parasitic movement that is first about destroying because they're full of resentment. Resentment, I think, is one of the most undiagnosed mental issues that really pervades elite society and the left. But she couldn't care less about him. And it's so narcissistic. Can we just say that she is a flat out narcissist to go to somebody's funeral where you should say, you know what, I'm perfectly comfortable by saying, you know what, his life is worthy of honoring. He didn't deserve to die, but it wasn't the intent. He shouldn't have been acting like a maniac. I think you could take pause. You could say, you know what, this is too bad. And that's fine. I think that's perfectly appropriate. At the same time, that's not why she's there. She's there to try to get clicks, to try to get media attention, because this is the key. AOC and Al Sharpton and all these people are trying so hard to create another George Floyd, because the George Floyd situation made them temporarily more powerful, and they miss it. They were allowed to have big protests, make themselves seem like they're Martin Luther King. These are narcissists that are constantly searching for another piece of outrage. And guess what? There's just a supply and demand problem with racism in this country. We're far more decent than AOC would ever have to believe, that most situations actually don't have a racial element, that you have to create your own race hoaxes, that you have to try to import race where it doesn't exist, where this was not about race. This was about what Viktor Frankl said. There are two different types of people. There are the decent and the indecent. And Jordan Neely was acting indecently, and Daniel Penny was acting decently. That's the divide here. Not white and black or rich or poor or homeless and housed. No. It's decent and indecent. And then something unfortunate happened because of it. AOC doesn't view the world through that lens. She views it through sectarian tribalism that will only make her more powerful and popular.
Look, you did the tough thing for your employees during COVID. You paid your people and you pulled your business through the pandemic. And now doing the tough thing could qualify you for up to $26,000 per employee at covidtaxrelief.org. Government funds are available right now to reward companies with 2 or more employees who stayed open during COVID. It's not a loan. You don't have to pay it back. The program's complicated, but no one knows more about it than the CPAs and tax pros at covidtaxrelief.org. You pay nothing up front. They do all the work and then share a percentage of the cash they get you. Businesses of all types, including nonprofits and churches, can qualify, even those who took PPP loans, and even if you had increases in sales. You did the tough thing during COVID. Now let covidtaxrelief.org help get you up to $26,000 per employee. Visit covidtaxrelief.org. Isn't it worth checking out? covidtaxrelief.org, covidtaxrelief.org. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. Who were those 2 lunatics at the top of the table?
So that's Syra Rao and Regina Jackson, and they run the Race to Dinner program. And that the program is basically they come to dinner and you pay them thousands of dollars, and they'll sit there and explain why you're racist. And that's what they did in that scene. And of course, in real time, it was like 2 hours of this, just them sitting there talking to these white women and just breaking them down, emotionally and intellectually, explaining to them why they're racist, having them confess, instances of them being racist. Really just, it's the most intense brainwashing session I've ever witnessed, and probably the only real brainwashing session I've ever witnessed in real time in the room. And it was pretty disturbing to watch. But when we decided to make this movie, I had heard of these Race to Dinner things a couple of years ago. And when we decided to make this movie on this subject, the first thing I said, we got to get into one of these Race to Dinners. We have to get there. The problem is that the dinner is only for white women, which is pretty interesting. So when we called them and we asked about, is it possible for a man to attend? They said, no, you have to be a woman. And then that brings us back. Now it's like a sequel to What is a Woman? Because that brings us back to the question, well, what do you mean you have to be a woman? What is that?
Right.
And I think if I remember correctly, the way that they threaded that needle, because their real answer was, no, you have to be a real woman. But they didn't say that. So they said something like, well, you have to be someone who was socialized as a woman. That's who we allow. So anyway, that ended with me not being able to attend. So we had to find some other way to get in the building. And as it turns out, you can be a waiter serving the dinner and be a man, and that's okay. So that was our loophole that we exploited, and we kind of went into that scene, and I knew that my goal was, well, I wanted to get them to toast racism. I knew that. But before that, I wanted to earn my seat at the table. I had to somehow find a way to sit down at the table, and then I'll know that I've sort of completed that step of my anti-racist journey, which we did.
You nailed it. That Saira Rao is the most hateful person in this entire film. She's disgusting. What an absolute pig this person is. She hates America, and she hates whites. I mean, deeply hates. Am I wrong?
Oh, I'm not wrong at all. She says it herself. She says it about America. America is a piece of S, I believe she says, her words. And yeah, she's very clear. She doesn't like white people. We know that from the film. We know that from her Twitter history. I think she also has left Twitter recently. So if this film had something to do with that, then I think that alone makes this movie worth it. Right.
Totally.
But yeah, she's full of that. That's obviously what motivates this person is a real resentment towards white people and wanting to find an outlet for that, so that she could kind of very thinly veil it in anti-racism or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I walked away with no doubt of my own opinion of her, that she hates whites, hates America, and keeps finding these suckers like these poor women. I'm sorry, but they're pathetic too. Every single one of those women is absolutely pathetic for agreeing to this, for paying this money, and for letting this woman speak to them that way. I have half a mind, not for a documentary, but just for kicks, to invite her. I have a couple of different places where I spend my time, and she wouldn't know it was me. And I'll just show up, and then she and I can do battle. It'll actually be really fun. I'm a white woman. Go ahead and reform me, Saira. Let's see how it goes. I think it's going to be fun for us both. She was so annoying, but seeing you needle her and like tweak her and ultimately expose and thus embarrass her is very gratifying. That's how you wind up feeling at the end of this, even though there are infuriating moments, like when seemingly normal people sign a petition to change the George Washington Monument into
the George Floyd Monument. Yeah. and by the way, that was another one. We went into that. We wanted to do this petition in D.C. And I honestly, I was like, nobody thinks of me as being optimistic, but I discovered making this movie that I was an optimistic person, because I honestly, we went to do that scene, and I was saying to the crew, like, I don't know if anyone's really going to sign this. Like, is anyone really going to sign a petition to change? Yeah, maybe you could get people to sign a petition to take George Washington's name off the monument, but to replace it with the George Floyd Monument, who would sign it? And we found that our problem was the opposite. We were having trouble finding anyone who wouldn't sign it.
Oh my gosh.
Just the vast majority of people we stopped, white or black, they were, yeah, absolutely. They were ready for it. They thought it was a great idea. And I find that, incredibly depressing, I have to say.
That webinar that we showed the Robin DiAngelo clip from, there was good news in that thing. We aired it in March of 2023 on the show because she and these other DEI leaders are lamenting their loss of power. They could feel it by March of 23, starting to wane, their influence starting to wane. And so is there any good news in all of this in your travels? Did you see some shoots of grass, shoots of green there on this nonsense losing power and starting to ebb?
I think so. I not so much in making the movie. Most of the places that we went to and the rooms that we were in were all people that were true believers. So not a lot of light peeking through the darkness there. But culturally, yeah, I think that look, just the fact that everybody has heard of DEI, and I think the vast majority of people have a negative. It has a negative connotation for the vast majority of people. That alone is a pretty good sign that DEI is reaching its peak. I think if you got 100 random people into a room and asked them how many of you have heard of DEI, probably 98 of them will say that they've heard of it, and most of them will sort of say while rolling their eyes, because they see it as either a silly thing or something worse. So I think it's reaching its peak. But what you have to look out for is, okay, eventually DEI goes away. Nobody talks about it anymore. all the DEI initiatives go away because it's just, people see it as so ridiculous and toxic and harmful. But what you have to look out for is the people who promote this stuff, they're not going to go away. So they're going to try to repackage it as
It's
something
already
else.
being rebranded. They're calling it now belonging at the New York City schools.
Well, there you go. The belonging. I mean, to me, that sounds even creepier somehow. So the repackage to me always sounds worse. But yeah, exactly. So they take it, they get rid of DEI, but they don't really get rid of it because the ideas are still there. And the ideas really are so embedded, especially in the academic world, especially in academia and in the school system, that, to really root those out is going to take, that's a years-long process, really.
And in the Democrat Party, where Matt Walsh infiltrated the DNC when it was held in Chicago as your alter ego, as your man bun alter ego. And we saw a video of you just wandering around behind I think it was a CNN live shot in your character, which was amazing. Here he is behind an interview of Chuck Schumer. So how'd that go for you, Matt? And what did you learn?
Well, I learned, for one thing, that apparently I'm not well liked at the DNC. So I was shocked by that. Shocking. I couldn't believe it. So we went to their DNC Expo thing, which is in a different building, and I got kicked out in like 20 minutes, escorted out by just flanked by security guards and cops that walked me out. And they said that I'm not welcome back in the building. But the thing is, that was a different. So they said I can't go to that building, but there's a whole other building where the actual convention is happening, and they didn't say I couldn't go there. So we went there next and just walked around the floor. And as you could, I didn't do it. I just walked around. I actually didn't do anything. And that alone was enough to really infuriate a lot of people on the left. Just my mere presence in the room, which I think is interesting. And also, it's like, what are you hiding something? Shouldn't you be happy that I'm there being exposed to your ideas? Shouldn't you embrace that and welcome it? But they didn't, apparently.
They don't like having their sacred cows attacked, and now you've attacked two of them. If you're tired of the same old coffee from those mega corporations pushing their woke agendas, listen up. It's time to take a stand and support a brand that truly embodies American values, Blackout Coffee. These guys stand with hardworking Americans who believe in family, faith, and freedom. They roast some of the most incredible coffee you will ever taste using only premium grade beans, roasted, and then shipped to you within 48 hours. And for the cold brew fans, Blackout Coffee is excited to announce the launch of their 2 new ready-to-drink cold brew coffee latte options. Don't settle for less. Make the switch to Blackout Coffee. Head on over to blackoutcoffee.com/MK or just use the code MK when you're checking out for 20% off your first order. blackoutcoffee.com/MK. The code is MK. Join the movement. Taste the difference. Remember, with every sip, you are supporting a brand that stands for America. Be awake, not woke. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. The term that kept coming to my mind over the weekend was Ruth Bader Biden or Joe Bader Ginsburg, because the comparisons to that situation have been plentiful.
They're eerie. Yes.
On the left. The sane left is seeing that if Joe Biden refuses to get out of this race, and everyone acknowledges if he doesn't willingly go, he can't be dumped. That's an impossibility given that 99% of the delegates are already pledged to him. That if he refuses to go, he will be the Ruth Bader Ginsburg of presidents, because he will more than likely cost the Democrats this race at a time when they could have won it. And it's already late in the game. Like, they should have switched him out early on and had a primary, but he refused. But now, in the wake of this disaster in which he did not deliver in that debate, he owes it to his party, and they argue the country, to step aside. And I agree. As much as I would love to see a clear path for Trump to go in, the Republicans to win, separate and apart from that, I just don't want our country to have to deal with an infirm president. It's not right for the United States. There's a reason we have the 25th Amendment. You tell me whether the RBG argument is likely to prevail even on those Democrats who are digging in on holding on to this guy saying just a bad night.
I don't know. And the reason is that the Democrat mafia is run by a bunch of octogenarians. And I think they're afraid if they pull Joe Biden, they're going to be pulled next. I mean, if they pull Joe Biden, does that mean Schumer and Pelosi have to go? I mean, Pelosi's older than Biden. She's 84. I mean, she's actually sharper than Biden and a lot tougher. But there is this very interesting almost deal with the devil that has been done with this group of Democrat power brokers, Bill Clinton, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, previously Harry Reid, Joe Biden, and they all kind of entered into politics at the same time, the late 70s and early 80s, when they all kind of began to get to DC. And they look at themselves almost as like, that's when we were like the class of 78. And they've all looked out for each other for the last 40 or 50 years during this managed decline of the United States of America. And Megyn, their entire identity and their purpose is in holding on to political power, like holding on to it to the bitter end, that we're not going to pass it down to the next generation, that we're not going to kind of just release control. We are going to, until the moment that we are in a casket, we are going to have political power. Amazing. I think this is actually one of the great weaknesses in both. The Republicans aren't immune to this either, by the way, just to be clear. But the Democrats are actually far worse right now, far worse. The Republican Party has younger voices that are ascendant. Say what you will about Speaker Johnson. He's definitely a different generation than Nancy Pelosi. I don't know if the RBG argument will actually resonate, because the great Democrat fault line is that the base of the Democrat Party is hyper radical and very young, but their rulers are incredibly transactional and very, very old. And the old leaders, they're not all of a sudden going to hand off the baton. They will hold on to power until they are dead. And
here's
look at Joe Biden.
We
Joe
put
Biden
together
says,
a montage of just a few of them. Some of the names you mentioned are in here. Watch. This is their reaction over the weekend.
Yes, it was a bad performance.
Clyburn.
I've been a part of debate preparation before, and I know what when I see what I call preparation overload. And that's exactly what was going on. He should stay in this race.
We see Joe Biden up close. We know how attuned he is to the issues, how informed he is. And I debate with him about legislation, and not debate, but discuss it with him. He's right there. So in any case, it was a bad night. Let's not sugarcoat that. It was a bad night. It was a great presidency.
You all did not have any kind of conversations about, should Joe Biden drop out of this race?
Let's have another debate where actually the moderators will push back on Donald Trump's lies. He intimidated your network, unfortunately.
It's him or Trump. It's literally, you go to a dinner and your choices are steak or a pile of poo. This is not a difficult choice.
Joy Reid, of course. I love the line that it was the moderator's fault. The moderators needed to fact check Donald Trump and his lies, and it was their failure to do so that made Joe Biden look bad.
And it's so amazing. The media carries their water endlessly. I mean, as if Donald Trump gets fair treatment from the media. There's fair, let alone favorable treatment from the media. No, but if there's any sort of a moderator, and Jake Tapper and Dana Bash just like, here is the question. What is your thought? They could not have been more boring, right?
Yes,
it was,
which is good.
It could not have been. And I mean, and to Dana Bash's credit, and to push back against the Levi Jeans guy, is
Dan Goldman.
She followed up 2 or 3. Yeah, I can't remember his name. Levi Jeans error. And so like 2 or 3 times. She follows up. Will you accept the results? Okay, fine. Like that's all right. Here's what's important. To Jake Tapper and to Dana Bash's credit, which I never thought I would say, it goes really poorly when debate moderators are in the fact-checking business.
Yes.
They tried that. Remember that? It's very, very, very hard to do, because are you equally applying it? By whose standard are you doing it? And so it is much better to allow the American people to decide, and to then just put out the framework. Are you answering the question, or are you not answering the question?
Let the other guy fact check him. Let the moderator's duty to defend is only to defend his or her question. That's it. Not to then fact check the actual substance of the answer. And Dana Bash and Jake Tapper did a great job the other night. They did not get involved in any of that nonsense. And had they done so, it would have looked like this. Mr. Biden, you just stated that no troops died on your watch as commander-in-chief. And Jake Tapper, he's very pro-American troop. He would have had this at the ready. 13 troops died at your disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. Another 3 in Jordan. Could have done that. Mr. Biden, you just stated that Mr. Trump stated good people on both sides. Just this week, that was debunked by Snopes. It's been debunked by many other nonpartisan fact checkers in the past. That, do we really want that debate where it's all what Jake Tapper and Dana Bash or Megyn Kelly or whomever think about the issues? Bullshit. That's not what happened here. It was Joe Biden's obligation. He couldn't do it.
And I want to just also say, and I think it's being lost in the coverage, President Trump deserves a lot of credit for being just a little bit of the sideshow of this debate and having amazing self-control. I don't think he has gotten the people say, oh, what do you do? Like, complimented his self-control. Think about this. This is a guy that's trying to throw you in prison that you believe is not the rightful president from last time. You just want to go over there and smack his head down. I mean, they've talked about fighting each other, by the way. And Donald Trump just very gently was like, I don't know what he said. And he doesn't even know what he said. It was just that little gentle touch. He allowed the opportunity for Biden to self-destruct. And again, to an amazing discipline, Megyn, he did not interrupt him. I think there was only one opportunity, maybe. In fact, it was Joe Biden that was on the attack. And Donald Trump just kind of shrugged his shoulders. And that Zen Donald Trump, it was good to see.
No, it's true. But now the Democrats came out the next day almost uniformly and said, my God, he's got to go. It's a disaster. We all saw what you saw. And then once Joe Biden signaled, I'm not going anywhere, and Jill Biden signaled the same, they started to get a little bit more defensive of him. Lawrence O'Donnell was tweeting out
that's where they
the
are
non-panic zone tonight on my show. You heard Joy Reid, at least he's not a pile of shit, so vote for him. Then you had Joe Biden come out with this message that they're finding very stirring and reassuring because his vigor was back at a rally in North Carolina, SOT 10.
I know I'm not a young man. State the obvious. Well, I know. I don't walk as easy as I used to. I don't speak as smoothly as I used to. I don't debate as well as I used to. But I know what I do know. I know how to tell the truth. I know, like millions of Americans know, when you get knocked down, you get back up.
It was a good reading. He's a good reader. He can read off the teleprompter. He proved that at the State of the Union, and he proved that yesterday. That's not being president. My children can read off the teleprompter well too, because they come in the studio and they practice sometimes. They can't be president. Not yet.
Yes, and here's the kicker: is that Joe Biden does not have the current capabilities to govern this country, and so he's able to read a couple words in front of a crowd there. If you are not able to dialogue or discourse against Donald Trump, how are you able to negotiate peace with Vladimir Putin? How are you able to deal with Xi Jinping? And the answer is you're not. And so what everyone realized is that there is an administrative state, a puppeteering class that is currently running the United States government. And the assault on, or at least the criticism of Joe Biden's mental faculties is opening a lot of people's eyes to actually how our government is currently formed and structured. And it's not the way you think. Joe Biden is not in charge. There are a group of experts that are currently calling the shots in this country.
Listen to this, Charlie. Speaking of the advisor class, because this is the new narrative that's coming out. It was his advisor's fault. It wasn't his fault. He's actually perfectly competent. He was just over-prepared. You heard that in the James Clyburn shot that we played as part of that montage. And we've heard it from multiple other Biden defenders now. But this is from a follow-up in the New York Times, following up on what happened in the Sunday meeting, that Hunter and Jill and his family are urging Joe Biden to, quote, keep fighting. I read as follows. The anger among Democrats was made evident on Sunday when John Morgan, a top Democratic donor who is close to Mr. Biden's brother Frank, publicly blamed the advisors who managed the president's debate preps, citing by name Ron Klain, that's his former chief of staff, Anita Dunn, his top communications advisor, and Bob Bauer, that's her husband and also a top lawyer. Biden has for too long been fooled by the value of Anita Dunn and her husband, Mr. Morgan wrote on social media. They need to go today. The grifting is gross. It was political malpractice. He elaborated in a subsequent interview. Quote, it would be like if you took a prize fighter who was going to have a title fight and put him in a sauna for 15 hours and then said, go fight. He said, I believe that the debate is solely on Ron Klain, Bob Bauer, and Anita Dunn. Member of Mr. Biden's family were likewise said to be focused on the president's staff, including Ms. Dunn, a White House senior advisor, and her husband Bauer, the president's personal attorney who played Trump during the debate rehearsals. They were asking why Mr. Klain, the former White House chief of staff who ran the prep, would, in their view, be allowed to, quote, overload him with statistics. And they were angry that Mr. Biden, who arrived for the debate in Atlanta with a summer tan, was made up to look pale and pallid. Hello, agape. It was not just his color. I refer you back to our earlier discussion. So it's the advisors, Charlie. They need to go. Let me tell you a story about a guy named Leo Grillo. Leo was on a road trip and came across a Doberman. This dog was severely underweight and clearly in trouble. Well, Leo rescued the dog and named him Delta. But sadly, Delta was just one of many animals that needed help. And this inspired Leo to start Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, and horses from the wilderness, and they provide their animals with shelter, love, safety, a home. April marked 45 years since Leo rescued Delta, and Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions. If you want caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak with your estate planner, because there are tax benefits too. You can grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and to speak with your advisor too. We call dogs a man's best friend for a reason. You can help those who need it most. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. deltarescue.org. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. You have in it a domestic extremist quiz. I'm going to go through this with you and the audience so that the audience can figure out whether they too are domestic extremists. This is fun. I actually took the test this morning. There's 12 questions. Number 1, I am married or would like to be. Now, audience, pay attention to how many of these are a yes for you. I am married or would like to be. I want or have at least 3 children. I want or have 4 or more children. I or my wife stays home with our baby, or I wish I or she could. I believe parents are a child's primary authority and educators. Kids generally do best when raised by their married mother and father. I would not trust the average politician or childcare expert to walk my dog. We try to attend religious services as a family. Life begins at conception. Children cannot choose their gender. Sex education should be left up to parents and not taught to elementary school age kids. Promiscuity, pornography, and abortion are not conducive to long-term happiness. If you answered yes to 1 to 3 of these, yikes, you might be a domestic extremist. Yes to 4 to 7 of these, warning, you are definitely a domestic extremist. 8 to 10, red alert, you are a dangerous domestic extremist and should expect a knock on your door by a government official shortly. 11 to 12, bye-bye, have fun in the gulags. I came in at a strong 10. I was 10 out of 12.
Nice.
So I'm with you. Yeah.
We're going to be sharing a cell in the gulag, you and me, Megyn.
But this is real. And I wonder, with your LA friends, what do you think the average score would be out there?
Probably, 3 to 4. And I mean, it's funny, since I kind of have come out now with my face, I am expecting like a few very surprised text messages in the next few days as like word leaks out. Although like, I don't think any of them watch any of the media that I've been doing. But it's definitely scary. I mean, the thing is that most of my friends who are on the left, who are liberals, who are Democrats here in Los Angeles and in New York, They already thought I was crazy. I think having a third child already kind of marked me as like someone on the fringe to them.
Weird.
I mean, that's how
weird.
Strange it is. Yeah, you can't have more than two. And then like when I converted to Catholicism, that was like the real like, oh, now she's a freak.
That was the straw that broke the camel's back.
It was.
No, I get it. I get it, especially because, I've lived in New York for almost 20 years, but I've paid a lot of visits out west, and it's a special kind of liberalism out there. Yes. The New York liberals are very judgy, and they hate conservatives for sure, but the LA liberals have a more elitist quality to their liberalism. Like they really do look down on you if you don't see the world as they like. You're genuinely a bad person.
Yeah, like I read about in the book, there is some memoir in there because I grew up on the west side of Los Angeles, and I myself was like a snob towards conservatives or anyone on the right or Christians. I looked down on flyover country. I was better than that. And I've just had this sort of very interesting journey, like done a total 180 politically, in terms of my faith, my social conservatism. And so I really kind of don't fit in here. Although I will say, there are a lot of, surprisingly, a large number of conservatives here. I went to a book reading a few weeks ago, actually in person, and young men were coming up to me, and they go to like local colleges in LA, and they were fans, and they're fans of yours. And I was like blown away to know, like, we're not alone here, even in the heart of deep blue California.
Maybe you've heard me talk about Bonner Private Wine Partnership. Their rare Malbecs are incredible. If you enjoy a glass of wine, try these wines from the extreme altitudes of Argentina. The flavor is unlike any other. Blackberry, leather, smoke, little dark cherry. And these wines are nearly impossible to get on your own. The producers deep in the Andes Mountains make limited quantities. The best part? They have cut out the middleman. You will not deal with a big markup. Today, I've got a great offer for you. If you visit bonnerprivatewines.com/MKS, that's BONNER, privatewines.com/MKS, you will not only get the wine for over 50% off, plus free shipping, you'll also get a bonus bottle, a small batch limited production wine from their exclusive wine cellar. That's 4 bottles for the price of 3. It's a deal that's hard to turn down if you are a wine lover like I am. Just visit Bonner, BONNER, privatewines.com/MKS to claim your bonus bottle and become a part of America's most unique wine club. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. I'm amazed that the judge completely dismissed Robin Yurty, who didn't want to be there. If I wanted to sink Fani Willis because she forced me out of the DA's office, as Fani alleged, I would have come running to your courtroom. I would have said, Ms. Merchant, how can I help you? I can't wait to sink her. She's terrible. But you had to subpoena her. You pointed out she was terrified to get up there. When she actually was forced to testify, she was very laconic, very short answers. She was not volunteering anything. And I found her very credible. The judge said, I'm paraphrasing, but like it wasn't filled out. Like her testimony wasn't filled out. Right. I can understand that criticism because I too wanted her to offer more detail. I wanted to hear like a narrative answer. Right. So what are your thoughts on him dismissing her testimony and how her testimony went?
I was surprised that he dismissed her because I thought she was by far the most credible witness that took the stand. And I was disappointed because I could have made it more flowery, gone into salacious details about what she had seen them with.
That's what we wanted.
Right. And it's crazy because I was under attack for doing that. So, I'm getting right to the facts. I'm bringing a witness. And that's just kind of my style in court. I'm one of those people where I don't, and it's from trying jury cases. I try not to waste jurors' time, so I get to the meat of it and then I get out. And that's just my style. But with Robin, she was very hesitant to come forward. She had a lawyer. I think all of this context is important. She had a lawyer who filed a motion to quash and relitigated that right before she testified. That lawyer, who is a very pleasant and wonderful person, is a Fani Willis supporter. So, you've got all of the lawyers that did these motions to quash, you see their names on her campaign flyers regularly. So, Robin Yurty hired a lawyer who is literally on Fani Willis's campaign flyers as a supporter, trying to keep Robin Yurty off the stand. Robin didn't have a beef to come. She didn't want to be a part of it. She always said, I'll tell the truth. But the other thing that I think a lot of people don't understand is that hesitant witnesses will not talk to the defense out of court. So, my interactions with her were through her lawyer and, somewhat limited. So I don't have the ability when someone doesn't want to come and testify for me to get all of these flowery details. I got what I needed from her. And she was unequivocal. There was no doubt in her mind, and she was her best friend. Yeah,
she said no doubt. Okay, he said it ultimately. In addition, while the testimony of Robin Yurti raised doubts about the state's assertions, it ultimately lacked context and detail. And then he went on to say, but even after considering the proffered cell phone testimony from defendant Trump, along with the entirety of the other evidence, neither side was able to conclusively establish by a preponderance of the evidence when the relationship evolved into a romantic one. That's just, with respect to the judge, that's the biggest lie in this opinion. That's the biggest lie that he wrote. That's just not true. Neither side was able to conclusively establish. And there's a little trick there. There's a trick, like a sleight of hand, conclusively established by a preponderance of the evidence. Which is it? That's almost holding you to two different standards there. The correct one is preponderance, 51% more likely than not. And he wants conclusive 51%. You absolutely got there. This is the only mention of Yurti or the cell phone records, which show him at her house overnight. So what was he doing there?
Right. And Yurti, there wasn't really any motive to lie. So she didn't work for the DA's office anymore. She has her own career. This wasn't like she'd been there 20 years and was fired. She had literally come on to work for her best friend to help her with media. And then they just had a disagreement and she was demoted. And so she left. It wasn't like this was this huge, blowout between them.
Everyone's saying disgruntled. The left-wing media you saw, disgruntled.
She wasn't disgruntled. She didn't look disgruntled. She didn't want to be there. But, a lot of that was she doesn't like my client and doesn't like our side, So she told me, she's like, I don't want to help you. And a lot of the witnesses were like that. A lot of them did not want to help me, did not want to help my side. And so, I have to talk to them and say, but the truth is the truth. You have to tell the truth. That's what you've got to do. And that's what I kept telling her, despite her not wanting to help my side. She said, I'll tell the truth.
That's amazing. I see your point that you did get hit and Fani Willis hit you for, probing the details of her personal life. And yet here you decide discretion is the better part of valor. Like there's no reason to get into the really salacious details and it gets held against you. I wondered if in the moment, since she was a hostile witness to you, she was there under protest, sometimes as the lawyer, you're like, I've got my admission. I'm just going to move on because I actually don't know what I'm going to get if I push more. I don't want to screw up my record.
Right. That's true. And, there's a lot more that Robin Yurti wants to say that was not relevant to this case. And so I was trying very hard to not, it's ironic. I was trying very hard to not turn it into a circus because she's got different issues with Miss Willis's office and her prosecution of other cases.
Isn't she a whistleblower and something else?
She has somewhat, she's not one of, as far as I know, she's not one of the named whistleblowers that's actually, testifying or anything like that. But she is to a certain extent. And, that stuff wasn't relevant to my case. And so I was trying very hard to just stay focused on the relevant issues in my case, which is why we didn't go into all the flowery details and things like that.
Do you think at some point Robin Yurti might sit down with somebody, let's hope it's me, and actually just tell the story? There's nothing prohibiting her from telling the story other than what? The threat of Fani Willis or the threat of helping Trump?
I think Fani Willis is very powerful in the Atlanta area. And I think just from talking to a lot of witnesses, they did not want the scrutiny. They didn't want what happened to me to happen to them. They just don't want that. And as you see, it's very easy to charge someone in a criminal case, and I'm not commenting on this case in particular, but everybody knows, you can indict a ham sandwich. And so the person that you don't want to get in crosshairs with is arguably the highest ranking law enforcement officer as an attorney, in the state past the attorney general. Fulton County is the largest jurisdiction we have. So I think it's reasonable that people don't want to get in her crosshairs. And I think there's scary. A lot of that going on.
Yeah, that's scary. Well, of course, that's the perfect lead into Terrence Bradley. OMG. What? I mean, okay, let's start at the beginning. I didn't realize until the hearing that he was the tip-off to you on the fact that this affair began. The way I had read your motion filed, I think January 6th, was it led me to believe somehow that maybe it was Nathan Wade's ex-wife, Joycelyn, or her lawyer who maybe gave you the heads up. But it turns out it was Terrence Bradley, Nathan's former law partner. And we've seen from those full text messages between you and Terrence Bradley how helpful he wanted to be, how much he knew about the affair, how many leads he wanted you to follow. And then it was a 180 when he got on the stand. So tell us your experience with Terrence Bradley.
I'm still shocked when I look back at it, looking at him, but I could tell from his testimony, when he by his eyes and when he looked at me and said, "I'm trying to save my law license." That was one of the only times he directly looked at me during his testimony. And I think that was him telling me, like, I'm sorry, but I'm trying to save my law license here. But it was disappointing because he came to me and he knew, my role in the case. He knew that I represented one of the defendants in this case. He knew I represented Mr. Roman. And so he came to me and initiated this contact, but I know Terrence and I knew Terrence and, I very much like Terrence as a colleague, a professional colleague and a friend. Our kids have gone to school together. Like, it disappoints me greatly. I am surprised. I'm still surprised because I thought that he would tell the truth on the stand. We had many conversations. Those texts are just sort of a small snippet of it, a timeline, but there's many conversations. And I went and I pulled back my phone records, I'm like, am I crazy? Did I dream up all these phone calls? And so I pulled out my phone records and I'm like, nope, it follows exactly my timeline of all the times we talked about it. And I'm not the only person that he told about it. He told another lawyer in the case who represented Mr. Chesborough, told him about it and told some other folks, as we've seen from some subsequent filings, a district attorney in Cobb County told her about it. So, I was very surprised by the privilege argument because I'd never heard that. I never heard that until Mr. Wade and his friend called a friend of Mr. Bradley's. That was the first time I had heard the word privilege.
Just to clarify for the audience, meaning that when Terrence Bradley got on the stand, he claimed everything he knew about Nathan Wade's affair with Fani Willis was privileged. And meanwhile, he'd been talking, he was like the town crier about it prior to the moment he actually took the stand. So there was a divergence there between his behavior and what he was claiming when he hit the stand. Keep going.
Right. And, not surprising because if it's privileged, then you know about it, So he's saying, oh, well, I didn't know it's speculation. Oh, but it's privileged. It's like when the privilege didn't work, we switched over to speculation. Which is it? It's confusing. But the thing with this privilege term, where it first came about, was when Nathan Wade actually called Terrence's best friend and, said, hey, remind him about his privilege. And so that was the first time that this whole, oh, wait, it's privilege sort of came in. And I think that's when he had that threat almost that, hey, I'm coming after your law license. And when Terrence took the stand and said, I'm trying to protect my law license, that told me everything I needed. At that point I said, okay, I've got to switch. And I think you could even see my demeanor switch at that point from, hey, Terrence is my friend to Terrence is someone who lied to me and is lying on the stand.
Right. It was clear. I mean, it was clear to everybody that he was lying on the stand, including the judge. The judge put absolutely no weight on his testimony. And so he got what he wanted. Nathan Wade got what he wanted and getting him to shut up when it mattered. But the text messaging, I thought, was very damning, very damning. Why would he? I mean, he said absolutely that he knew when it had begun, that it had begun prior to when they had testified to on the stand, and that it had begun after she left the DA's office, as you point out, a line. I just want to line, not LYIN. DA, a line, LINEDA. She later, I would submit, became a lion DA, but in any event, so that was back in 19. So one of my audience members, I read their emails, Ashley, and one of them wanted me to ask you whether you wish in those text messages you had established the foundation for his personal knowledge, since that was what the judge said. He didn't see any foundation for it. Like, this could have been speculation by him. It could have just been like, yeah, I think they did. And we don't know how he knew or if he really knew at all.
Right. And I wish I had, because I talked to him about that in person and on the phone. When I filed the response, the second, not the first filing, but then they responded and said, okay, we were in a relationship, but it didn't start until after he was hired. Then I called Terrence, literally sitting at my desk in the same office, and said, okay, this is what they filed. I need to respond. Let's talk about it. And that's when he told me about like the garage door opener and things like that. And he explained things with sensory details, like I saw this and he told me about this. And that, those details, I wish I had captured in text, but at the time I didn't know that I needed to, because I didn't think that Terrence would ever, clam up and claim this privilege theory. Going back, I wish I had gotten a lot more details, but I didn't know I needed
So he
them,
gave them to you in person. Like, do you, sitting here today, do you have any doubt that he knows as a fact, he knows that they did begin the affair prior to when they claimed?
No doubt. I have no doubt that he told me details. And, as lawyers, we learn to get sensory details. One of our jobs, it's like we become sort of a lie detector test almost, that we can tell when people have sensory details, when they don't, and he was just telling me certain details. And, part of what we do is we try to match up facts. So he's telling me things early on, telling me about the Yurdi apartment, for example. He's explaining it in detail. And then when I finally find Miss Yurdi and I confirm the apartment, I'm like, okay, well, Terrence was telling the truth. All of those details match up. The same thing with when they met. Terrence told me about when they met at this conference, and then I went and subpoenaed the records from the conference and verified that he was speaking at that conference and she was in attendance at that conference. So, all of those details matched up from what he told me, which led me to believe he was credible.
I want to tell you about the Association of Mature American Citizens, or AMAC, an organization dedicated to America's seniors. AMAC stands out today by not only advocating for senior issues, but also by pushing for conservative values that affect us all. If you join, you're not just supporting America's senior citizens, you can become part of a movement defending our freedoms and securing our nation's future. Plus, membership brings you exclusive benefits like discounts on travel, dining, entertainment, and special insurance rates. Regardless of your age, if you're driven to preserve freedom, AMAC welcomes you. Sign up now at amac.us/Megyn. And for a limited time, get a free gift membership for someone who shares your love of our great nation. Don't miss out on this chance to make a difference with AMAC. Join today at amac.us/Megyn and extend the invitation to a friend or family member for free. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. We're talking about what a swell guy Joe Biden is. So swell. And how the media runs cover for him. Now, do you guys remember, not only in the campaign of 2016, but during Trump's presidency, how many news stories there were about Trump and his weird obsession with his daughter, Ivanka? He's like, got the hots for his daughter. Look how he touched her waist at the Republican National Convention in 2016. Remember? Didn't you read a bunch of this stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
The media love this story. Like, he's creepy. He's a perv. There's something between him and the daughter. How many stories have you read about Joe Biden and his daughter? Approximately
0.
None, because the media has run full cover for Joe Biden on what was in the contents of his daughter Ashley's diary. Now, this diary was stolen by ne'er-do-well and then marketed to people like James O'Keefe, who also now is potentially in trouble with the law, though it's not illegal for a journalist to take stolen goods and publish them. The New York Times did it with Sarah Palin's emails. What's illegal is if the journalist is in on the theft, pays for it, encourages it, that kind of thing. So far, there's no evidence of that that's been made public about James O'Keefe, and he denies having done it. But I go back to the criminal case involving the ne'er-do-well. It was some woman allegedly, potentially involved in drugs or some sort of nefarious behavior in some house where Ashley Biden had been staying, and this person found her diary and then marketed it. And the diary was extremely incendiary. The contents of the diary were extremely incendiary. And there was a period of time where we didn't know whether it was hers. But then as the case went on and the FBI was involved and they indicted, the DOJ indicted the thief and alleged that this was the Biden diary, we covered it here on this show. We did it carefully and we did it responsibly, but we covered it. Just as the media would have way sooner in this course of events had it been an Ivanka Trump diary that said anything, never mind what was in the Ashley diary. And what we have today is an update to the story because this defendant is about to be sentenced. And Ashley Biden herself wrote to Judge Laura Taylor Swain on April 8th to say she will not be attending the criminal sentencing for the woman who stole her diary, but she now she has been sentenced. But she wanted to write a letter about why this woman should get jail time. And the judge just unsealed that letter received from Ashley Biden. This was at the request of the New York Times, which really wanted to see what Ashley Biden was saying. Has the New York Times reported about the diary or the letter? No, they haven't. They're not reporting on the content. So no, so they're still running cover.
It was a catch and kill for the New York Times.
Apparently they still had a letter, didn't find it was interesting. Okay, she wrote things like, I am deeply saddened that I even have to write this letter because my personal private journal was stolen and sold for profit. And she goes on to say, please throw the book at her. Now, here is what the diary says, among other things, previously reported by the MK Show. This is, let's see, dated 1/30/2019. I've always been boy crazy. I remember pulling up my skirt in second grade and showing the boys my underpants. Hypersexualized at a young age. Hypersexualized at a young age. What does this do to? Was I molested? I think so. I can't remember specifics, but I do remember trauma. I remember not liking the name of some unknown last name house, their house. I remember somewhat being sexualized with Caroline. We don't know who that is, but there is a first cousin named Caroline to her. I remember having sex with friends at a young age. Showers with my dad, probably not appropriate. Being turned on when I wasn't supposed to be. And then she goes on to call her mother not emotionally available and so on. So here is the daughter of the sitting president saying she thinks she was molested when she was a child. She remembers the trauma, though not the specifics. In searching for said specifics, she mentions inappropriate showers with her father and being turned on when she wasn't supposed to be. I'm sorry, but this is a story by any measure. And it gets a complete blackout from the media because they just want to say, well, stolen. Well, now it's on record, just like the Hunter Biden laptop, as belonging to the child of the president, who's a grown adult now. And still, they won't report. Still, they will protect him.
Yeah, there'd be one thing if there was a standard that was adhered to in any form or fashion, right? I mean, there was a time like in the Walter Cronkite world of journalism where there was some observance of sort of these kind of scandalous details and the media doesn't get into it because it's not of public record. Well, that's changed entirely, but it's changed only based on your ideology as a politician. I mean, if you are a liberal, progressive Democrat, again, back to the Walter Cronkite days. If you are Donald Trump, I mean, can you imagine how fast something like that would find its way to
I mean, that's the thing
air?
is we don't have to imagine. Like I've made the comparison that a prosecutor in New York is going to put a porn star on the stand, have her detail and detail exactly what happens during her time with the president, when that same individual still has to pay $500,000 in defamation to the president. But sure, give them a podium to say all this lurid stuff that the press is going to eat up and report and just gawk over. But this diary gets zero coverage. And it's even more egregious because details from that diary are corroborated in text messages Hunter sent to his sister and discussions that they had that were found on the laptop, which we were also told was misinformation. None of this is true and the media didn't want to cover. It's a pattern of the media covering for these people. And it's a pattern that this is Joe Biden's behavior. Not only has Ashley's diary said these things, Hunter's text messages to her have said the same thing too.
And yet, where's that story? Why am I still reading about Ivanka Trump? To this day, they're obsessed with Trump. That made its way into the trial, that Trump said allegedly to Stormy, you remind me of my daughter, and then he's got some weird obsession with Ivanka. You know what Ivanka didn't do? she didn't write in any document we've seen that she took inappropriate showers with her father and that there may have been a history of molestation. I mean, this is outrageous. And it's, let's be honest, dovetails perfectly with Joe Biden's public conduct toward young women. And
Always.
I'm not afraid to say it. I'm very creeped out by the fact that he seems obsessed with smelling young girls' hair, with getting too familiar with them, with crossing boundaries that no man should be crossing with young women. But there's zero appetite to look into it, to report on it, to probe it at all. Meanwhile, we're spending a whole trial on a one-night stand Trump may or may not have had with a porn star who's in the business of sex.
Right. Well, it sounds like somebody at the New York Times made the mistake of trying to journalisming.
Yeah.
Right. And it like quickly found its way into the higher assignment editor box where people were like, oh, you have this information? Let's not do that. Right. But to your point, I mean, what's the difference between that and what we're accusing David Pecker of?
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, it sounds, if they were the ones who put in the request for the information and then they were going to sit on it and not do anything with it, that sounds like catch and kill. Like how is that not catch and kill? I think somebody should ask them. If I were a media reporter, I would call them and ask them for a comment. And the lead of the story would say the New York Times is engaged in a controversial catch and kill strategy that they will not comment on. I mean, really, don't you think?
Just to correct the record, the reason Stormy owes Trump $500,000 is because the Ninth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals sided with Trump in his effort to recoup additional legal fees from Stormy Daniels, who had filed and lost a defamation case against him. So you're correct. She was ordered to pay Trump's attorneys over $120,000 of legal fees, which is on top of the more than $500,000 in court-ordered payments to Trump attorneys she'd been ordered to pay. So in any event, she lost, and she lost big, and she was supposed to pay legal fees, and she didn't do it. Let me tell you a story about a guy named Leo Grillo. Leo was on a road trip and came across a Doberman. This dog was severely underweight and clearly in trouble. Leo rescued the dog and named him Delta. Sadly, Delta was just one of many animals that needed help, and this inspired Leo to start Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They've rescued thousands of dogs, cats, and horses from the wilderness, and they provide their animals with shelter, love, safety, a home. April marks 45 years since Leo rescued Delta. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions to stay open. If you would like caring for these animals to be part of your legacy, speak with your estate planner because there are tax benefits too. You can grow your estate while letting your love for animals live well into the future. Check out the estate planning tab on their website to learn more and speak with your advisor. We call a dog man's best friend for a reason. You can help those who need it most. Visit deltarescue.org today to learn more. That's deltarescue.org. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. And now we have the president of the student group. She's the Student Association, Associated Students president. Her name is Karina Zamora, issuing her response in writing. And I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you must hear a fair amount of this to believe the mindset. This is what we're dealing with. On the evening of Thursday, April 6th, the San Francisco State chapter of Turning Point USA hosted Saving Women's Sports with Riley Gaines on our campus, an event that promoted discriminatory rhetoric towards trans women athletes. Students protesting were coerced and given unwarranted warning cards threatening arrest if they violated the Turning Point USA policy. Though TP USA was followed by protesters, so they acknowledge Riley was followed by protesters, I believe the enforcement of these policies was weaponized to silence and threaten protesters, and the presence of police was both excessive and uncalled for. Okay, tell it to Riley Gaines. The heavy police presence in response to peaceful protest and the threat of arrest aimed towards students upholding the principles of social justice and positive change, leads her to believe that the administration has failed to uphold the principles our campus prides itself on. I, as president of Associated Students, condemn and stand against the hateful rhetoric and promotion of violence spread by Turning Point USA and Riley Gaines, as well as the confrontational behavior of the university police. She goes on to say, I call on the president of the university and her administration to hold themselves accountable and host a community forum to hear how damaging these tactics have been to our student body, demanding to know how the university plans to move forward with a plausible action plan, finishing with, to our trans-identifying students, we see you, we hear you, and we are here to uplift your voices. AS President Karina Zamora. In solidarity, by the way. I mean, not a word of apology to Riley, to the students who showed up there in support of Riley or wanting to hear Riley. It's all about them. They're not a bit sorry. They're prepared, I'm sure, to do it again, and they want to know why they were threatened for their behavior. So where does that leave us?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's a tension between the free speech rights of speakers and the free speech rights of those who would protest those speakers. I think we should. I think all these institutions have a responsibility to err on the side of protecting speakers, right, and allowing events to continue in a civil way, right? So that was not a peaceful protest. Whenever you're not letting someone leave a room, that's a hostage situation. It's not an exercise of free speech. So, yeah, I think there should be very little tolerance for that particular line getting crossed by protesters on college campuses or anywhere else, right? You're physically coercing somebody when you're mobbing them in that way and not letting them leave a room, or and certain speech, is threatening, right? Where you're putting people in fear for their life, right? Now the speech that questions the wisdom of letting trans women compete against biological women in a sport like swimming, that is not violence, right? And to call it violence is just a symptom of what has become a crazy ideology, right? I mean, again, this is a problem with the extremes politically, that they view everything in terms of power, and this is true both on the left and the right, but it's especially clear on the left at the moment. They're not interested in what's true. They're not interested in the actual motives of the people they're attacking. They view everything as an exercise of power, right? Even scientific knowledge, a concept of objectivity. Just asking questions about biology. All of this is power. None of it has anything to do with truth, right? And that's so crazy making, and it's so at odds with what is actually going on in the minds of people who are simply worried for obvious reasons about specific outcomes. I mean, they're worried that, to take a specific case, a 13-year-old isn't in a position to really consent to an irreversible medical procedure, right? So they're genuinely hard problems to solve here at the policy level and at the individual level, and it requires wisdom and compassion from all of us to interact with those problems and try to find our way to some decent outcome, right? But the problems are different, and even this trans issue is not the same when you're talking about trans men and trans women, right? We don't have the analogous problem of trans men fighting to dominate their divisions in sport, say, right? Not having biological women transitioning to become men posing a problem in sport. So this is just
or their locker rooms, or their prison spaces, or even their sponsorships and scholarships. I mean, look how many sponsorships Dylan Mulvaney is getting now. We talked about it yesterday on the show. Even for bras and women's facial cream, aging facial cream, like oil of Olay. Like, why did we run out of biological women to sell bras? We now have to go to biological men to sell bras? I mean, and not to mention tampons. Tampax is working with Dylan Mulvaney. Dylan Mulvaney does not even have a vagina. I mean, it's like, am I drawing the line too close to actual womanhood here? Like, this is insane.
Yeah, but again, it's a continuum problem, right? So on the far end of one side of this continuum, you have absolutely clear cases of gender dysphoria in children at the earliest possible time, where there really is no realistic threat of social contagion or ideology, browbeating them into having a problem that they don't have, right? So, and I know cases like this. I know a trans girl who, as a 4-year-old, felt that he, as a 4-year-old boy, was born into the wrong body, right? And there were no incentives to convince this kid that that he was trans and should eventually transition. But on the far extreme of the other side of this continuum, you have obviously deranged gaslighting advocacy of just completely crazy propositions, right? The problem for the rest of us is to try to figure out how to interact with this whole space in a way that is compassionate and pragmatic. And it's so to take the case of the specific case of trans girls, biological girls, deciding that they're trans or non-binary, there is legitimate concern that social contagion is at least part of the story, right? You have lots of young girls, teenage girls and tween girls who decide they, are no longer gender conforming, right? And it's a kind of fad. And it's not to say that every one of those cases is a matter of social contagion, but certainly some seem to be. And in those cases, it is totally legitimate, and it is not at all an expression of violence or malicious uses of power to be concerned that social contagion is leading some young people who aren't really in a position to think so clearly about the far future in their lives to make irrevocable choices, to go on hormones or puberty blockers or to have surgeries. I mean, to have teenagers having double mastectomies, right? It is easy to see that well-intentioned people will get very worried about all of this, and it's not an expression of hatred, right? And this is a completely distinct problem from the kinds of problems you just raised of competition in sport, right, and denying female athletes the experience they would have of succeeding because you have biologically male athletes outcompeting them, right? It's a totally different issue, and all of these issues are getting conflated, and we're finding it very difficult to talk about these things. But this process is not at all helped by dishonest and hysterical moral panics happening on the left, and that's what is happening.
Dogs are massive parts of our lives, right? They're our family members. They deserve to be treated appropriately. So it is important to prioritize their safety and well-being. One of the easiest ways to do this is by giving your dogs a safe and secure space just for them, like we do with Strudwick and Thunder. They sleep in their crates every night. They love it. They want to go in there. It feels like their little den. And I also know that they're safe. They're not going to get into any food that's bad for them, etc. Let me introduce you to the collapsible dog crate by the American-made company Impact Dog Crates. That's the #1 dog crate for protecting your dog in your home. Built from heavy-duty aluminum, this travel-friendly dog crate can be set up in less than 60 seconds, and it folds down to just 8 inches tall. That makes it easy for travel purposes or if you want to hide it. I know what you're thinking, but a dog crate will be such an eyesore in my home. Not necessarily, and not this dog crate. Not only does the Impact collapsible dog crate come in 5 sizes, one of which can even fit a Great Dane, but you can choose from 6 vibrant colors to match your home interior. Almost nobody else has that. I haven't seen that anywhere else. Thanks to Impact Dog Crates, keeping your dog and your home safe is easier than ever. If you want to provide a safe space for your dog, head on over to impactdogcrates.com and use the code MK for 15% off your crate. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. I'm appalled at how the people in this university that my dad loved behaved. It was absolutely disgusting. So before we roll the tape, set it up for us. Why were you there?
Well, I was there, ironically, to speak about the merits of free speech and why free speech is dying on campus. And so, honestly, if you were trying to demonstrate exactly what I was warning about, you couldn't have planned it any better. So, ironic, but really, really sad to see, as you said.
So you go to speak about free speech, and were you there on behalf of Turning Point USA or with TP USA?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay.
I was invited by the Turning Point USA chapter at the University at Albany.
So do you think that was what flagged for them that you'd be a fun person to protest?
Yeah, I think it's one of many things. One is obviously there's a lot of attention around TPUSA because they dare to go on college campuses and speak vague truths sometimes. And people on the left don't tend to like that on campus. There's also the idea that I'm a transphobe. I think a lot of people saw signs with my face on it, did a very, very quick Google search, and saw that I, for example, support biological reality and I oppose the mutilation of children. And that really is all it took to set people off. I think the transgender issue is what they claim to be at the center of this protest. I think a lot of it is they simply don't like any idea that goes against theirs. And this is just one of many examples that we're seeing on college campuses today.
Sometimes it seems to me they don't know what they're protesting. They want to be like the civil rights protesters, but they really have no beef. So they show up there and they chant some vague slogan and somehow they feel powerful. You got up there, tried to speak to, who invited you? Like what group were you speaking to?
It was the Turning Point USA group.
Okay, so it was that chapter on the college campus. So they're there. And how many people were in the room, would you say?
Oh, I'd say well over 100. It was packed to capacity. I think they were worried about the fire code at one point. But it was also hard to know how many were protesters and how many people were there, not who necessarily agreed with me, but just wanted to hear me speak and ask questions. The Q&A is always the fun bit once I'm done talking. And I'm very open and ask people who disagree with me to come forward and ask questions. And so there are a lot of people there hoping to actually engage in debate. I got a lot of messages afterwards of people apologizing for the behavior, but also saying how disappointed they were that they couldn't actually engage in the debate that I think is so sorely needed.
Mm-hmm. So this is just a bit of video of what happened to you by these so-called activists who tried to shut you down. I'm sorry, just an anecdotal observation, but why are the people who do this almost universally unattractive? I'm sorry, but it's true.
Well, I think that what's so strange is that they all rely on just either empty threats or really ad hominem attacks, nothing else. There was no substance. The only thing that was even vaguely ideological was the fact they were saying trans rights are human rights, but no one could explain what trans rights are. Honestly, I think the funniest chant was no cops, no KKK, no TPUSA, when I'm a Jewish immigrant, and I don't think the KKK are exactly falling over themselves to invite me to be in any way affiliated with them. And so there was just no basis to truth in anything they said, but it was just all fueled by anger. But also, if we're all Nazis, as they say we are, they didn't exactly pause when they were shoveling the pizza provided by TPUSA down their throats. And so really there was no basis of reality to anything they were pushing. It was just children having a tantrum. And I think it says a lot about really the college environment that they are allowed to behave this way and get away with it. I don't think anything is actually going to happen from this. It's just another example of shutting down free speech. And in some ways they were successful.
I'm sorry, some of those people could have used a break from pizza. They did not need extra calories. I'm just going to call it out. Like, it's universal. They're always unattractive. They're bitter. It's the same people who are the masked Nazis who wanted us to cover up our faces forever. And they're working out their issues on people like you who are trying to spark good faith debates on very difficult issues, which is exactly how we historically have worked through those issues. I understand that in addition to their pizza shoveling, they decided it might be a good idea to burn or tear a Bible. What did they do to the Bible?
Yeah, so one of the TPUSA members had a Bible with them, and one of the protesters decided to tear it up because that's what free speech means to them. I think it just shows really at the core of it, they don't care about free speech. This is just about bullying people off campus. Again, destruction of property is a crime, but I doubt anything will happen here. One can only imagine what would happen if it was, say, a different religion and their prayer books were being torn up. I think it just demonstrates so many levels right now.
Right. If something had happened to the Quran, can you imagine? We've seen that in the past. They say students attended the event as a peaceful demonstration of queer solidarity and joy, and that their rights to free speech were denied when authorities later removed them so the event could continue. That they were the ones disenfranchised, Ian, once the authorities said, get out.
I mean, it's just the victim card, isn't it? Is that they present themselves as victims because they're victims of speech. Speech and violence are merged together so they can use really violent threats, violent actions to defend themselves supposedly against speech. And then when consequences come down upon them, as they do for any adult behaving this way, then suddenly they're the victims. They fundamentally don't really know what free speech is, but even if they did, they do not care. It doesn't matter what kind of person I am. It doesn't actually matter whether or not any of their accusations of me are true or false. Anyone who is invited by a college chapter to a public school specifically as well has the right to speak. And they don't have to listen. They certainly have the right to protest. I actually supported their right to protest. I think it's great that anyone is engaged in the political space with any passion. The problem is when they try to use the heckler's veto to really threaten people, bully people into not speaking, into not hearing other ideas. That's when they cross the line.
Did you try to speak at the microphone and this is what you were met with?
No, actually, we were talking about that. I was backstage this whole time listening to one of the many glorious insults that I've heard better ones since I was 5 years old, honestly. So it wasn't all that offensive. But we were speaking with the law enforcement there and various administration. They didn't want me to go out because they just thought it would rile people up more. They were trying to calm the situation down. But really, the horse had bolted on that issue. I've been in other college campuses where protests have tried to happen. University of New Mexico is a clear example where they had a lot of protection before the speech. And that's really what you've got to do. Once you've got people dancing a conga line around the room, spitting in people's faces, all these kind of things, you can't really bring that back. And so the horse had bolted. I think it was quite clear that the speech wasn't going to go ahead in that room. And so we were forced to go to a different room under police escort and police protection during the second event, which was just ridiculous. This has to happen on a college campus in the United States. It's just absurd.
Sure, you can go to Brazil or Colombia and get some crazy stuff done to your face. But why would you do that? Here's a real review from Genucel.com. Claire writes, I absolutely love Genucel. My skin feels so good, tighter, younger, with a more even tone, and I only used it for a week. My advice for everyone, take a before picture. Then there's Jim, who makes another point, writing in, wife loves it. Ever since I purchased it for her, things got much more interesting after dark. Enough said. It's true. Nothing works like Genucel, because it is a family recipe for over 20 years, made by a compounding pharmacist in small batches and always safe, cruelty-free, and natural. Right now, go to Genucel.com/MK60 and save over 70% off Genucel's most popular package. That's all their best stuff, including now their Ultra Retinol and Dark Spot Corrector. Don't wait. Go to Genucel.com/MK60. All orders upgraded to free shipping, and every subscription order includes a complimentary spring spa box with 3 spa essentials, also free. Limited time. Visit now. Genucel.com/MK60. That's GENUCEL.com/MK60. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes. Just today, we have Judy Woodruff on PBS. This was yesterday. She did it, but it's in the news this morning. Going out there and actually having the nerve to report on the air that Donald Trump is trying to stop a negotiated ceasefire in Israel, in Gaza, because he doesn't want a win on the record that might help Kamala Harris. Listen to Judy Woodruff.
The reporting is that former President Trump is on the phone with the Prime Minister of Israel, urging him not to cut a deal right now because it's believed that would help the Harris campaign. So I don't know where that, I don't know, who knows whether that will come about or not. But I have to think that the Harris campaign would like for President Biden to do what presidents do, which is work on that one.
Yeah. That was so grossly irresponsible. It led to Netanyahu's office directly issuing a statement calling that a complete lie. Then she tried to blame it on Axios and Reuters. She comes out in an apology, quote unquote, yesterday via X. I want to clarify. No, the word you're looking for is retract and apologize. This is not a clarification. That's an ass covering word. My remarks on the PBS News special on Monday about the ongoing ceasefire talks in the Middle East. As I said, this was not based on my original reporting. I was referring to reports I had read in Axios and Reuters about former President Trump having spoken to the Israeli prime minister. In the live TV moment, I repeated the story because I hadn't seen later reporting that both sides denied it. If this was a mistake, I apologize for it. But here's the thing. We've gone back. We've tried to find the Axios and Reuters report on which she allegedly based this misinformation, and we have been unable to do so. Now, Axios has only an updated report in which they say a call took place between Trump and Netanyahu, and their updated report says Netanyahu office denies the call, and they actually report in this thing that the call was intended by Trump to encourage Netanyahu to take the deal. It has exactly the opposite intent and message and substance of what she reported. Reuters, as far as we can see, only had a report that cited the Axios report, not any of its own original reporting. Now, does that mean there never was one? And Axios, maybe they clarified and they scrubbed their earlier report? I haven't seen that. And I've online directly asked both Axios and Reuters for a clarification, because if they're to blame, they should raise their hands and say, we screwed it up too. So far, they haven't. But the point is, these mistakes only ever run in one direction, Hogan, and that is to make Donald Trump look bad.
Right. I'm so glad you put it that way, because we used to always talk about the algorithms and the failures of big tech. They never cut in favor of our side. It's always against us. Listen, the Biden debate really exposed the media in a way that I don't think they've really been laid this bare in a long time. This is more than a hatred for Donald Trump or a bias against Donald Trump. This is now an investment in Kamala Harris. They're protecting her because they don't want her to be exposed and then they themselves be exposed again for lying about her. Remember, this is the same media that said the Russia collusion was real, that the Hunter Biden laptop and the Ashley Biden diary were fake. The same media that said behind the scenes, Joe Biden's really a triathlete. You just don't see it, of course. This is the same media that told us, hey, by the way, Kamala Harris should really be off this ticket. She's a drag on the ticket. No one likes her. The staffs are at war. They don't respect her. She berates her staff. She's horrible. Now they're saying she's the best vice president ever and would be the best president ever. The media's decline is so obvious because they do things like this all of the time. And I'll give you just one quick story about myself here in Washington, D.C. I got invited to something that they have all the time. And I walked in the room and I remember seeing people in the room, a lot of journalists, and one of them was largely responsible for the Russia collusion lie. He was getting backslapped and handshakes all over the room. And people are looking at me like I'm the jerk. And I'm thinking, this is the guy who took y'all on all the wrong journeys, who gave you all the wrong information that you parroted, and now has ruined your reputation. And somehow I'm the one who's persona non grata in the room. Not that I care, because it's, the media elite. But the point is, the American people are now on to this, that in large part, as I like to say, the media's popularity is between Congress and COVID, because they continue to lie to us all of the time. And running with stories like this, they don't care if it's not true. They just want it in the ether so that it's reported many times, it's retweeted, and so that's what sits in people's mind. So at the very least, it kind of makes those middle of the road voters waver a little bit. Whether they know it's true or not doesn't matter. And they don't get punished for it. They don't get fired for it. They get awards for it. So there is no incentive to stop that behavior.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly right. And if as long as they're bashing Trump, they're in good standing with their elite cocktail party circles. That's really the only goal.
Sure.
All, quote, mistakes will be forgiven. All, malpractice as a journalist will be forgiven, just as long as it hurt Trump. Your heart was in the right place. There's a Washington Post report out today talking about how we really need to examine Joe Biden's health. Like, he really did need to step down after having seen him on Monday night. The Washington Post editorial board is now seeing the light. Oh, really? Now you really are? Because here's what they tweeted out. Here it is. Hold on a second. The opinion by the editorial board is Joe Biden's DNC speech shows the wisdom of him stepping aside. Now they're starting to see it. But here they are.
So wise.
Just last month. Okay, just last month. Here's this is June 15th. Cheap fake Biden videos enrapture right-wing media, but deeply mislead. And it goes on to read as follows. A particularly effective attack on a political candidate can come in the form of a video snippet that appears to reinforce an existing stereotype. The social media feed of the RNC regularly churns out misleading clips of President Biden, 81, intended to show that he is too old for the job. So misleading. And yet now that he's out and she's doing well in the polls, it's a totally different opinion, Monica. They see it very differently now. He really needed to go. By the way, here's another thing. In May of 2023, they had an opinion piece in WAPO. Joe Biden's 80. At his age, should he be running in 2024? By the editorial board, what's the right way to think about his unique situation? First, voters need to maintain a sense of perspective. Don't compare me to the almighty, he always says. Compare me to the alternative. He's got a point, particularly if the alternative is 4 more years of Mr. Trump. Mr. Biden's physicians have declared him credibly in good physical and mental shape relative to his years. So we're all good to go. And now today, on second thought, he really needed to go.
Yeah, I mean, it would be laughable if it weren't so pathetic and frankly dangerous to the health of our republic. Megyn, what you just laid out. Look, they all knew that he was essentially senile back in 2020. They protected him because of his age and because of COVID. They allowed him to run his campaign from the basement. But, here's a bigger point. The imperial media, as President Nixon called them, and I love that phrase, the imperial media, with no checks or balances on them, unlike a presidency, which has 1 million checks and balances on the presidency. But the imperial media has always been biased to the left. The difference in the Trump era is that the level of activism and intensity has gone off the charts. So whereas they always had an agenda and they always had some bias to them, now they are the enforcement arm of the propaganda of the system, not just the Democrat Party, not just the left, but the system, the security state, law enforcement, et cetera, sort of the dark, shadowy powers that actually run this country. They are the propaganda enforcement arm for them. So they will flat out lie. They will not pursue stories if they're inconvenient or damaging to their side, to the overall narrative and the overall movement of the country toward this kind of leftist cliff that we're being driven off of now. I remember President Nixon, and he was my very first boss in his last years, Megyn. And I remember him saying to me, they will try to protect Democrats at all costs, but they will never straight up ignore a story. And this was in the context of sort of Bill Clinton and the early days of Whitewater and before Monica Lewinsky. And he was saying they'll never ignore a story because they want the ratings, they want the eyeballs, they want their papers being sold. So they'll always, in the end, go for the story. That's no longer true. They will not do that. They will bury stories. We saw with the Russia hoax, they'll amplify lies. They're being fed by the CIA. They're being fed by the FBI. And they just take the stories and run with them. They don't question them. And in fact, they're not stupid people. They're activists. So they know very well that what they're being fed is part of a narrative. And they don't care. There are exceptions to the rule,
they got
like
so burned by those
Catherine
Hillary
Harris or you,
emails they were like, oh, and we're never helping a Republican get elected again. Heaven forbid. And the points she's making, Hogan, about the media and the way they're running cover here and talking about this convention, like, oh my God, no fact checking whatsoever. I talked about this yesterday. Those 3 women who got up there to talk about their abortions, and the one girl at the end who was like, God love her. She was the victim of incest under Donald Trump. I would have had to have the baby. He's made clear umpteen times that he's in favor of exceptions. He's not even for the early bans that people like DeSantis are pushing, but put that to the side. He's made clear from the beginning he would always include an exception for rape, incest, or health of the mother, life of the mother. He has said that anyway. No fact check going there. So the reason they're so rabid about protecting her, and going after Trump is because this is how they think. Listen to Nancy Pelosi. The Trump War Room actually just tweeted this out. Listen to her. I can't tell which media outlet she's on here, but we'll see it in the clip. This is the stakes, according to Nancy.
We have to defeat a person who is a threat to our democracy of the kind that we have not seen. At the beginning of our country, Thomas Paine said that times have found us.
5, 6,
declare war,
8,
establish a new nation. Abraham Lincoln took up that charge to keep our country together years later, decades later. And now the times have found us to save our democracy. That is what we are here to do.
It's a Thomas Paine moment. He's the British crown, and I guess the Democrats are the revolutionaries.
Yeah, Democrats always accuse Republicans of things they themselves are guilty of actually doing. You'll remember the person from the stage. I don't remember what state she's from. I don't remember what office she holds, but I remember they made fun of her because the way she used her tongue during her
lizard tongue
speech.
Mallory, somebody from Michigan.
Her. There you go. She was saying, can you imagine if Trump gets elected? He could use the FBI to go after political opponents. He could weaponize the DOJ and go after us. And all the tweets were like, who's going to tell her? Like, this is exactly what you guys are doing. Someone like Nancy Pelosi understands that. And as you said, the media doesn't check her. They don't ask a tough question. They don't ask a follow-up because they don't care about truth.
You know how much my family and I love our dogs. Yes, even my little Strudwick. Not so little. Quite a presence, actually. I can't imagine life without them, nor do I want to. They've had a great life and have one now. They're lucky. But some dogs are not so lucky. And that's why I'm so happy to tell you about Delta Rescue, the largest no-kill, care-for-life animal sanctuary in the world. They have rescued thousands of dogs, plus cats and horses too. They provide all the animals with shelter and safety, and most of all, with love. And they have been doing it for more than 45 years now. Delta Rescue relies solely on contributions, and giving can bring tax benefits too. Talk to your estate planner about how you can grow your estate while helping animals in need. And check out the estate planning tab on their website if you'd like to learn more. We love our Thunder and our Strudwick, and we would love to find dogs who don't have homes like they do. A loving, caring place to live. Delta Rescue helps the pups and cats and horses who need it most. DeltaRescue.org today if you'd like to help. DeltaRescue.org. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.